Good morning at last. G'day, everyone. Yeah, been having a few teething problems with my computer. So anyway, it seems to be sorted now. It seems to be functioning properly. Just let me pop that out. Yeah, so I was just doing some funny things. I don't know what was happening, but anyway, here we go. Danny, how are you, mate? Fatty Finn, always a pleasure, mate. Scotty, good to see you, mate. Lukey, as always. I didn't mean to hit that. You already know about that. Deborah, good to see you here. Gary, always a pleasure. Thought I was going to see you in one of the actual Zoom sessions, but, I saw Sammy and I saw Paul a couple of times. I've missed Richard, so I haven't had a chance to say hello to Richard on the Zoom. Dom sent me a photo of him with Sammy in the UAE. He was actually in the UAE and sort of hooked up and went around to Sammy's place and had a bit of a meal. That's UAE biff for those who don't know him. So yeah, that was interesting. It was just with a whole lot. It was all meat and a whole lot of spices. So anyway, I'll better continue on with the actual program. Raymond? Oops. I'm hitting things all over the place. Sorry about that. Let's just... Usually it moves. Now it's stuck. Yeah. Oh, God. Nothing ever works properly when you don't want. Yes. I got my coffee, at least. And I did have, while I was... I had some beef biltong and some pork rind as I was actually trying to fix things. I needed the energy to snack and some food or to justify it. It was getting close to 11, so it was an early, unscheduled, time-restricted feeding cancellation. Darkfield Carnivore, how are you, mate? And there's Loki with the link. Now, as Bart actually has asked, when things become a bit, there's too much in the actual, too many comments and stuff like that. It may be a good idea just to use the Q hyphen sort of approach for questions. I'll still click on the other ones, but I just won't answer them, and I'll move forward just so they're actually on the live thing, just in case. I'm always concerned about people missing out, because even though I click for the chat to be available on when people view it again, it sometimes doesn't work, and I have to complain to YouTube. It's not always like, I don't know, straightforward. So anyway. John, good to see you, mate. Yeah, it seems me and Bart have been having a few issues lately. Oh, I mean, it's not only us, it's other people as well. You know, one thing about computers, it's Turing machines. They're always the odd photonic, the odd subatomic particle is going to go astray and cause some havoc now and then. But in my case, it was updating my Office package I sort of get access. I can pay like $15 and get the full blown professional version of Office. I did some sort of update last night, but I don't think it actually updated properly. Something happened, and when I tried to do something today, it sort of was going in. I want to update. I want to. Yeah, so it was really just hanging my system. So if anybody asks me, which fire up a Word document, Harry, that I sent you, you'll get a comment like that. Just so you know, don't aggravate the bear or the devil, the Tassie devil, to be more precise. Shelley, good to have you here. Daniel, always a pleasure, mate. Always a pleasure. KL. And how can I reduce water intake and upregulate metabolic water? Just don't drink it. Simple as that. It's not very difficult. I think my diet has a fair amount of fat in it now, but I still feel the urge to drink at least 1 liter of water a day. Just suppress that urge. You can go a bit higher on fat in a sense, and that may help slowly force your body to produce more water from fat. So play it by ear, see how it goes. Sometimes it's a transition period. Some people can take a couple of months to transition effectively without getting dehydrated, and others will take a bit longer. But the more you put it off, and sometimes I usually say to people, be less concerned about the intake of energy and be more concerned about getting the machinery in your body to work properly. That's the most important thing, because if the machinery in your body work properly, then your whole metabolism, the whole way your body works, will work better. So get the water out and just prioritize more fat, reducing the water and actually putting in more fat, and being less concerned about how much energy you're taking up. And as long as you're not taking sugar up, over time, you'll dilute the level of deuterium in your system, and should improve fat oxidation and also improve water production in your body. If you're losing weight, that can be an issue, especially if you've consumed a lot of seed oils for years and years and years. I did a video about, is losing weight or other is the deuterium in your fat cells that you release causing your weight problem or problem with cancer. I think it was related to cancer in that regard. So it is a problem, especially, because most people have not stored like animal-based fat into their fat cells. They've stored seed oils, and that is higher in basically, the stuff that we don't want in our mitochondria, which is deuterium, which does damage to the mitochondria. And so we use deuterium depleted water or a very high fat diet. So very high fat, like 20% protein, 80% fat. And we do that for a number of months, because what we're trying to do while we're, in order to dilute and reduce. Other people don't want to do that. They go, okay, I've got other priorities, and I go, fine. I want to build more muscle, and that's a good strategy as well. Well, then you can sort of buy yourself metabolic water, like deuterium depleted water, the DDW water, and reach and try and actually change the deuterium composition of your water, your cellular water, and that also will improve fat oxidation over time and improve mitochondrial health. None of us are ancestral. We've done a lot of inappropriate things throughout our life and done a lot of damage and problems we cause to our bodies. So I think ultimately you got to be very, very careful the way you go about doing things, depending on your past history. Consider your history when you do anything, because if you've got a lot of stored seed oil, that's going to be a problem. So you may need these other strategies of high fat or buying metabolic water. But if that's not your history and you're younger, you've got less stored toxic seed oils in your adipocytes, your fat cells, then you can consider other strategies in that regard. Alien Drone, how are you, mate? I was just watching a new video on low carb down under by Dr. Matthew Phillips, Metabolic Strategies as Therapies to Cancer and Neurodegeneration. Since I haven't seen the video, I can't really comment, can I now, mate? But thanks for letting me know. I will check it out and see what they say. But I think still mitochondria are at the heart. And I think the ketogenic diet or a high-fat diet, what it does is it's diluting the level of deuterium in the body, and in particular in the cytosol, that means inside the cell. And by doing that, it's reducing the damaging effects of the reverse Krebs cycle that a lot of these cells have, which keep on damaging more and more of their electron chains within their mitochondria and sort of impeding oxidative phosphorylation and putting the body in sort of this mode where it's producing lactate and fermenting a way that a sort of a source of energy, sugar and lactate that, the cancer cells can use. Ultimately, we want to reverse those mechanisms and we want to get the machinery of the body working in a different way. So that's critical in the way we do things. And that's why and taurine plays a role in repairing, because, okay, you bring the threshold of deuterium down. So what? If your electron chains are damaged, you need melatonin and taurine to repair them over time. So this is where an ancestral diet that's high in both better sleep, all those things, will help improve. So it's a multi-pronged approach. Deuterium depletion, better sleep, taurine, or animal-based diet to prevent, Thank you. Appreciate it. Going to stop being a lurker. Been mostly carnivore for about a year. Taking taurine, you recommended, but over 4 grams gives me a stomach ache. In our recommendations for dealing with a white tongue, you've probably got candida. That's what you've got. Usually it's a giveaway. Now, over time, taurine will help. You may have to go to a much higher level, but what you've got is you've got a gut microbiome that it's actually fighting you, and that's what's causing those things. You've probably got H. pylori as well, as that's usually what causes stomach aches and problems like that. What taurine does is it fights H. pylori. It tries to suppress it and tries to improve the acidic level of your stomach, which suppresses H. pylori and improves, stomach function. What taurine does is it also protects the lining of your stomach from further damage, so it heals it. Takes time, take a couple of months, and you may have to go to much higher dosages than that. The other thing is, if you've got certain pathogenic bacteria, you may need also that Reuteri. So if you go and check my gut videos that I did, and there's a playlist, and it actually covers the exact, or somebody can put it, Luke, if you could put it in the actual live stream, the Reuteri that I recommend, that actually has it suppresses certain pathogens like, C. diff, like H. pylori, and a couple of others that are actually involved in this sort of stuff. Obviously, if you've got white, you've also got some level of, candida as well there. Nice thing about taurine, over time, what it will do is re-regulate your digestive tract right through. So it'll regulate your pH in your stomach. It will basically also reduce spermidine, which is used by a number of the little critters in your intestine to, increase. You may also have potentially, small SIBO, which is a small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. A possibility, I don't know without checking. You'd have to check for that. Those sort of you can do those sort of hydrogen tests, and there's a whole lot of other things that a number of others that can be done. But generally speaking, if it's usually probably unresolved candida and unresolved certain pathogenic bacteria that need to be suppressed, pretty much. So, and because I don't do consultancies because I've got a day job, do consider consulting with Bart Kay as well, because he deals with a number of these sort of things. He's in. If you're not subscribed to him, please subscribe. And if you go to my featured channels, you will find him. Yeah, but do check out my videos. I do cover the stomach, I do cover dosages, and I do cover issues related. So I've got a playlist on digestion and a playlist on the microbiome and stuff like that. So if you go through that, you'll get a lot of information from those videos. Far more than I can actually provide on a live stream. I'm just giving you some general sort of stuff at this stage. Anyway. Well, that's the problem. That's the problem. They don't really know about deuterium, and they don't really know about the therapeutic intervention of taurine. And so they miss a lot. And this is probably the reason why some people go on a ketogenic diet. They do lower some of the threshold of deuterium, but not sufficient in some cases, or they don't know how to mitigate it because they're losing weight at the same time because they're not taking in enough protein. And because they're in a ketogenic state, they're going to be losing a lot of fat. And when you lose a lot of fat, a lot of that fat is toxic seed oil fat, and that's high in deuterium, and that can cause problems to the electron chain. So you need to protect them with taurine. You need to dilute that with metabolic water when you're doing this. Is why I recommend metabolic water to people with cancer. Most of my people, they're all in remission and in a much healthier state. They, like one of them, she's British, first letter L. I won't mention her name because I probably shouldn't for privacy reasons. And she's come to my to my Zoom sessions as well. And Shelley would know the lady that I'm talking about. And she tested zero. They couldn't detect any cancer inside her. Okay. And she was quite some way down the track into early metastasis, severe cancer. Okay. So there is hope to turn things around, but you really need, one, to stabilize the fatty acids being released. I do have a video covering this issue about cancer and deuterium and fat cells and prior exposure to seed oils. And it was done a while back. It's in my cancer playlist. Thanks, Shelley, for putting that up. Yes, she is. And it's a multi-pronged approach. You gotta, and this is where I think that the ketogenic diet, the low protein, very high, you end up too catabolic, and also you end up like breaking down too much tissue, which isn't a good thing, which cancer cells can use that breakdown, especially if you don't have enough leucine to drive it back in to protein synthesis. You end up making a bigger amino pool available for cancer cells. So it's the complete opposite of what they tell you, because she's actually on a carnivore diet, so she's, eating meat. So it's not the meat, it's the actual mitochondria not functioning, where you've got all these reprogramming that happens. I've discussed it in my videos. I'm not going to cover it now. But yeah, really, they miss a lot of these sort of things. So I suspect I won't learn much from that person listening to their video. Yeah, that doesn't work as effective as my approach, because it's missing. They talk about all these other, use these supplements and use that supplement, but they're missing the point. These supplements, yeah, they help a bit, PQQ, biogenesis. But if you've got, let's say, mitochondria that are already severely damaged, all you're doing is cloning. This is why I don't believe in PQQ, even though I have it. I've shown you guys that I have it, the bottle, but I don't support it for cancer people, because I don't want them cloning, really poor genes. Sorry, mitochondria. I don't want them cloning poor. I want them repairing their existing mitochondria so they work better. That's the critical part. And that's where taurine plays a role, and melatonin. And when you have taurine in the evening, you amplify melatonin. I've done videos on that, covering about with fisetin strategy as a senolytic. These are the things, by using in a synergistic way, where they sort of focus on in a narrow reductionist way. Oh, it's the mitochondria the problem. Oh, let's give all these supplements. But you're missing a whole lot of other synergies and other components, which is the deuterium side, which is the melatonin side for repair, the taurine side for repair. They're missing all this sort of stuff. And they do advocate a much lower protein intake, which is contraindicated because you're getting in less taurine. So you're not getting the reparative stuff that exists in animal foods. It's just, again, it's reductionist approach, and that's why it fails. Even though reductionist way, you can actually prove something. Thomas does actually prove you can take the mitochondria and put that are cancerous or non-cancerous, put them in the opposing cell lines, and actually get certain results. And he can say, well, it's a mitochondrial disease. Whoopee. Oh, then we should use, in a reductionist way, we should use all these supplements that seem to help, associated in studies, to help mitochondria. It's all these polyphenols and all that. I'll tell you something, most of them don't work, and some of them are contraindicated, can make things worse. So, bullshit. It's really basically fixing the damage that has actually happened inside the mitochondria. If you can't produce energy through oxidative phosphorylation, through the electron train in ATP, and actually your nanomotor spinning at 9,000 RPM and producing ATP, if you can't do that, then you get a signal back to the to the nucleus saying, well, sorry, mate, I can't basically produce energy. You start fermenting. You shift, you upregulate oncogenes and force the Krebs cycle in reverse, and try and ferment and produce a whole lot of lactate. That's what's happening. We want to reverse it the other way. You're not going to do that by polyphenols and crap like that. You've got to fix the mitochondria and heal them, so then they work properly, re-establish oxidative phosphorylation, turn off the oncogenes, reverse back into working properly, relatively. Anyway, yes, I know. I love them. Absolutely love them. Yes. I love Piggy. And it's low deuterium as well. G'day, Jenny. Harry, did you record the Zoom session? I never record Zoom sessions. It's a policy of mine. It's for people to turn up and just speak their mind. So I never record Zoom sessions, and I never will, for that reason. It's a privacy issue, I want people to turn up and actually just express themselves, me express myself. It's not there to basically put it on. It's a private sort of chat room, in a sense, where we can really let rip on any subject. Where if you do that on YouTube, you could potentially get your channel cancelled and removed completely, as you can understand. Because we talk about all sorts of things, how people identify and all sorts of other things, and about the, our dear friends at the World Economic Forum and many others. And, so when you talk about these sort of things in a more, let's say, open manner, in a free manner, you're likely to hit the censor board on YouTube. Very risky. Exactly. Ducking out. That's fine, mate. Smoking chips need restocking. Charcoal. Darren Schmidt, in an interview with Joey, said he thinks Paul's fruit, Saladino, has parasites, hence his food choice. Thoughts? I haven't seen it. I don't really know. Darren has got a few funny views. He sort of thinks that lactic acid is the big problem that causes most disease. He doesn't realize that, no, it's mitochondrial dysfunction that can actually increase not lactic acid, but lactate. And that taurine can actually mitigate that because it forces us through the Krebs cycle. So once you force it through the Krebs cycle by improving Krebs cycle efficiency, yes, and also function, it usually eliminates a lot of that problem. I think Paul's issue just was under eating protein. That was his biggest issue than anything else. But, it doesn't mean that he may not have had a parasite, but I think Paul would have known. He's a medical doctor after all. And, if he saw in his feces certain little wiggly things, he would have, realized, maybe I do have a parasite issue. I don't think he's that ignorant. So I doubt it, but who knows? I haven't checked the man. So he's down in Costa Rica, so pretty far away to be able to be checked. So, and we can all speculate, but me and Bart think that he was just under eating protein and doing some funny, strange things, causing himself some electrolyte issues and all that. If you're not getting enough animal food, you tend to not be able to, secrete sufficient insulin throughout the day. And if you're not doing that, then you can actually cause yourself some issues at the kidney level in managing electrolytes. Plus, if you're not getting enough meat, you're not getting enough taurine, which is the osmolyte that regulates electrolytes, which most keto people, very high-fat keto people, get these problems. And it's nothing new. And obviously, when Paul ate a bit of fruit or a bit of carbohydrate, he increased his insulin slightly, causing himself to retain electrolytes much easier. Remember, I did a video on the food guidelines ages ago, how they evolved and stuff like that, with Pim Johnson. I do have a playlist, and my first video covers this point about low-fat diets, which have very high carbohydrates, and why, Walter Kempner at the time, this is a researcher back in the old days, recommended no electrolytes, zero, because they were a problem because of the higher insulin and the retention. So he did not want at all. The only thing that he supplemented was iron in his low-fat diet. So this is the reason why, because people like fruitarians and people like that do tend to run a bit of a higher insulin. They don't need electrolytes. They can get away with it just eating fruit. They just waste away their muscles and stuff like that. But, so he basically he wasn't managing that side of things because he wasn't eating enough protein. And as a consequence, he ended up with some of these issues which got resolved with a bit of fruit, which could have got resolved with either a taurine supplementation or more meat. So ignorance on his side, that he went down the repeat, lane, or partially, or I don't know what he's doing now. I think he's gone down fully. He's up to 400 grams now. And that's why he's looking terrible from what people are telling me. Anyway, I'll leave it at that. Yes, and I suspect it was seed oil induced. Other holder carry coffee lounge. Well, yeah, I do bring along this mug to the meeting. Unfortunately, it is getting cold. Anyway, Up Syndrome, how are you, mate? Off-channel topic. Well, many of us can be. That's fine. Saw community post video on Bactria Kingdom. Some Indians here on the YouTube talk about King Porus defeating Alexander. What do Greek records say? What do you think? I've heard of it as well. It's bullshit. He was comprehensively, and he actually, remember, he'd actually walked into early before dealing with Porus to Taxilas, and he actually surrendered the first king that he came across, and that was the Hydaspes River that he'd actually, from memory, I remember the actual story, because this is well recorded and even recorded by chroniclers. Now, modern people are making up crap, and I know that in the actual history books of India, that's what they told. So I actually, I spoke to a Greek academic, and he knows about the history books writing, and he actually looked into the history books. And I think at high school, they are taught that Porus actually sort of won. They don't openly say that, because the majority of people reject it. It's actually taught at West Point and many other military academies. The actual fight, how he basically lowered the anxiety of Porus by moving troops up and down and reducing their, he had to put pickets along the fence at certain intervals, but he lowered the actual anxiety of the enemy. And then when they weren't expecting, he moved more than slightly half of his force up the river. I think it was about I can't remember now, 17 miles, 17 kilometers. I think it was miles, 17 miles. So he used to use miles back then. I can't remember exactly. He went across these, he got across, his own reconnaissance actually failed Alexander for, not that it hadn't happened other times. But he thought that the island that he was looking at was the other side. They got to that island and realized there was another island, and they had to cross that as well. So, yes, the water was shallower there, but they were up, nearly neck deep until they got to the other side. And basically the strategies that he used were, he slowed down, and, depending on what forces he had to, he used these Bactrian archers to move forward and fire, a whole lot of, rounds to slow down Porus's military, and then pretty much moved part of his cavalry in one direction, then thinking that, and then pushed it all the way around, and the other one then swerved in the other direction and just hammered his cavalry, and then his troops moved in using these long spears that they've got, and actually blinding the elephants, and then slowly moving forces around and pushing the forces against each other, and it was just like a massacre. So in the end, he was defeated, but then Alexander moved further east, and all the other kingdoms had actually united, and there are records of those kingdoms uniting. So if Porus had won, why were the other kingdoms actually, a number of other kingdoms got together and actually defended that? It's in the records. It's actually in the, they can't dispute. They just don't teach it at school. But if you look at some of the old records that are archaeological stuff, it's quite clear. And I think there's even some stuff that the British took when they colonized India. They took back to the museum in Britain, and it's actually recorded some of this sort of stuff that multiple armies, and that's when his own military rebelled on him, because it was like not 3-1 or something like that. It was 10-1, like 300,000 against 30 odd thousand Greek troops, and his own troops turned around and said, "Are you crazy? No, we're not fighting them." And so he had to withdraw back. But after that, he died back in Babylon due to, they think, well, there's a whole lot of theories, but I think that it was basically his close friend, and then he followed after from tropical diseases, which was more than likely what killed him. But it's, when you look at the records, when you look at the the information, it's just not plausible, because then it doesn't make sense why the other kingdoms had to unite against Alexander if Porus had won. It's just, some problem is with history, people, depending on who's writing the history, but nobody outside India agrees with that sort of record. No, Alexander was never defeated ever in any conflict. He was a man that was able to, on the fly, change his strategy completely. And I've looked at Alexander's military campaigns and the way he put them together. So I did have an interest in joining the military years ago when I was younger. I was, let's say, threatened or discouraged by my father. But yes, I had a fascination for strategy and military doctrine. So I'm well versed in these things. How much milk can a carnivore drink if a carnivore could drink milk? Well, I don't think traditionally any humans actually drank milk up until probably around about 10,000 years ago. Prior to that, nope. And then there was adaptations that happened over time. And obviously those people back then would have had no leaky gut, no issues with that. And so they wouldn't have had a problem. They just may have not had as good digestion, but at the same time, there was, you've got the enzymes in there to digest in raw milk, and that's what they would have been consuming. And over time, the body adapted by increasing. It's a bit like amylase. Tribal people have very low levels of amylase, but as we became, and that was sort of like a vestigial organs that remain. Well, we had adaptations from our earlier evolutionary history. So we had those sort of adaptations for amylase, for and so, but then when you actually get into agricultural societies, they have far more. Why? Because they get upregulated, because the food supply changes. So we've always had the ability to deal with milk from a young age. It just got down regulated. So rather than those genes being turned off, they got left turned on. That's all that happened. Epigenetic changes. We always had the capacity to drink milk. First from mummy, and then 10,000 years ago from animals. So it's not an issue. Never has been. Milk is not an issue for humans. Even the Maasai drink about 2 cups of milk a day, sometimes 3, and they still remain in ketosis. I mean, if you couple of glasses of milk, is not a lot of carbs, and if you're physically active, it's nothing. It's a blip, so it's pretty much irrelevant. So I usually have a cup of raw milk a day, so a glass, would be about 250 to 300 mils. So that's sort of just giving you an idea in terms of ounces. Give me a sec. So 250 is about eight ounces, and 300 is between 8 and 10.6 ounces per day. So, in each one of those is about 3.8 grams of carbs times 3. You're looking at about 11.4 grams. You're still in ketosis. So even if you had 2 glasses of that, you'd still be 22.8, still in ketosis. That's quite deep ketosis. Usually, if you're below 25 and below, you'd still be in ketosis up to 50. You could have 4 big glasses of milk, and you'd still be in ketosis. So it's 4 or 5 if it's a standard cup, which is 250. So the reality is, you can consume quite a bit of milk and really still be in ketosis. So it's a non-issue. Key thing is your gut permeability sorted with taurine and vitamin D? If it is, less of a problem. If it isn't, well, I wouldn't recommend it. Simple as that. So, and if you take the lactobacillus type bacteria, so if you use the old Ruteri that Lukey down here, put in the link, which is that one there, and you suppress a number of pathogenic bacteria, and then you put back some of the, by eating dairy products, and put back some of the lactobacillus type strains, what happens is you are able to better digest. I've got Chinese people back drinking milk with no problems who are lactose intolerant. It's bullshit. You can restore it in most people in that regard. Some will tolerate raw milk better than others. It depends, on their specific genetics and stuff like that, or their specific problems. And usually it's a gut microbiome problem that can be resolved with some of these probiotics strategies combined with taurine. Usually sorts everything out and suppressing the sort of the nasties that can cause some derangements. Anyway, yeah, look at actually some people had actually left some comments earlier, really, really early. I noticed when I'd gone to get my link and they had vanished completely. I don't know whether because it wouldn't have been all those people for some reason. When I rebooted and all that, a lot of things just don't know. It's sort of weird. It shouldn't technically do that just because I've rebooted. Like YouTube should hold on to that, and then StreamYard should be able to pull all those things across. So, but I've had a couple of problems last time when I was StreamYarding for whatever reason, and even this time. So I don't know whether they've changed anything or been playing around with things. So yeah, I'm slightly annoyed, but anyway, can't control everything in this world. Jupe, how are you, mate? Yeah, she is. She's definitely better. Definitely not. I know another lady that was hell-bent going down that pathway. I tried to discourage her from poisoning herself. But as I said, I can't give medical advice. And so I said, well, if you're going to do that, at least take high doses of taurine, which is chemoprotective, and there's research to show that. But it wasn't something that I was encouraging, so at the end of the day, chemo is not going to fix mitochondrial damage. You got to repair the mitochondria. You got to turn off the oncogenes, reverse those cells back into a senescent state, which is a damaged cell state, and then knock them off with senolytics rather than chemo. But that's my personal opinion. And I think that when you look at people with chemo, they end up with damaged immune systems and all that. And in the end, they usually die from a more, they get cancer again, and it tends to be far more lethal because of their immune system being weak, because your immune system plays an important role in killing off cancer cells. So if you damage your immune system with chemo, I mean, hello. But anyway, what can one say? Modern medicine. You're welcome, mate. Found you from Bart, actually. Okay. Do you mind telling me what the supplement stack that you generally recommend is, apart from taurine, not specifically for the tongue issue, just generally? The only things that I actually take in mine is when I'm going to do any exercise, I do put a bit of creatine in. Otherwise, I don't. I've had my creatine supplement now for, I have to check even the date. Maybe it's out of date. Maybe I shouldn't be taking it. I don't know. So, so I haven't been using it much. The things that I usually take on a regular basis, taurine, a couple of grams. I don't take the high doses because I don't need to. It's usually, like 2 grams. And if it's winter, I go up to 4 just for COVID protection, because it also protects the immune system from immunosenescence, from being damaged by the flu virus and the COVID virus and stuff like that. So I can sort of mitigate the damaging effects of those on the immune system, especially COVID, that has an immuno sort of senescent effect. And then the contraindicated jab of the ruse increase the threshold of those sort of things that can actually cause immunosenescence. I wonder what happens from a compromised immunosenescence. Oh, that's right, cytokine death. Yes. Anyway, we'll move on before I say too much and get myself in trouble. Yeah, and so, that I did take MSM, but, as you can see, my hair grows like mad, and it's costing me too much money in terms, even though I've got baldness and some of my relatives have gone bald or lost a lot of their hair, got alopecia and stuff like that. I don't. I've reversed my alopecia, but I've given up on MSM because my hair grows too long. It's costing me money in terms of haircuts, so that's really good. I used to do that. I don't do it anymore. I've still got MSM, but I'll end up giving it to Dad because he's taking it for his knee. But there's also what I do take is, because I did have cardiovascular, even though I've been discharged by the cardiologist, but I do take also as a vasodilator, both. I don't take much now, which is L-citrulline, usually when I'm exercising for vasodilation, and 30 minutes prior to exercise and 30 minutes prior to sex is what I usually take. So it's my version of Viagra. Yeah, so it's pretty much aminos. And the rest is just food. So obviously I used to take like a low dose vitamin E when I was still losing a lot of. If you get into a state of losing weight, it's a good idea, because a lot of us have got stored toxic seed oils in our system. So it's good to use the low dose Jarrow Toco. It's TOCO. If you Google that, you'll get the vitamin E complex that comes from palm oil, and that is one good to stabilize the fatty acids. If you go overseas on holidays and you may be eating in places where you don't know what things are being cooked, I usually recommend an astaxanthin, a high quality one, like every 3 days, because it does bioaccumulate in the skin. You don't want too much. And vitamin E on a daily basis when I'm on holidays, especially in places where I don't know what. I worry less in countries where they're using palm oil for cooking, and I'm less concerned. But I still do the vitamin E. I don't do the astaxanthin. I only do the astaxanthin in countries where I'm not really sure what they're cooking with, stuff like that. And so yeah. So that's probably about it. And vitamin D in winter. So I'll take vitamin D about 10,000 IUs in winter, spring and summer 5,000 IUs, and in summer none, because I just get outdoors and get the sun. And I am, as you can see, quite pale skinned. So I don't need a lot of time out there to absorb sufficient amounts. What about my selling? Paul said this is pretty cool and thinks it's medicine with microdoses of psilocybin to rewire your brain. Look, thanks for actually this day. I've been looking into some of this sort of stuff, but I'm not really as convinced with some of the stuff. And I do think that some of these things can cause some issues. But is that the guy's name? I've never heard of him. What I'll do is I'll put it in my list of things to do as a video. I think that would be a good video to cover on that topic. So I'll leave it at that. So I'll leave it for a video. So I think those sort of things, those sort of questions are good for a lot of people, and it's good for clickbait as well. So thanks for that, Daniel, and I'll cover it properly in a video. Harry, stream a while back, you mentioned camels and their deuterium handling capabilities also, how it's tricky to tell their age and conditions. I would love some sources on that. I don't have any sources on that. Laszlo Boris talks about it, and also Colin, I forget his last name. He's the actual a medical doctor that works with Laszlo Boris, and they talk about it because actually the other guy actually talks about it more about this, about the stories that the actual Arabs talk about, because this comes from Arab tradition. I don't even know whether there's any studies or anything like that. It's sort of more of an Arab tradition. And Laszlo's friend or partner in business, he basically believes that this Arab story is based on the deuterium depleting effects. And we know that the deuterium levels of camel meat and camel fat is one of the lowest. They've actually tested it, so it is one of the lowest in that regard. And so their view is that because they are a deuterium depleting machine, they have a lower threshold, and that's where it's coming from. But I don't have a specific study or things. It's things that I've heard from Laszlo and his other mate. So that's all I've got as a source. So, and if you look at camels, I did remember another person who was an Arab. This is a documentary that I was looking at, a Middle Eastern documentary, and he talked about the camels that it's hard to know their age. I think they check their teeth to work out their age, something along those lines. So that's a lot of anecdotes, but yeah, that's all I've really got. What do you see as being a main hurdle to getting over the Hayflick limit? There's deuterium and mitochondria, but then there's the issue of cell division ending. If I knew that, I'd be a quadrillionaire, HD. I'd be an absolute quadrillionaire. What we understand is, obviously things like, taurine helps with slowing down telomere loss. But is taurine going to basically allow you to live forever? No. That's just another mechanism. It's got a number of mechanisms in healing the mitochondria. A lot of mechanisms that taurine helps with longevity. That's why it's associated with longevity. But there's a whole lot of other compounds as well But on the cell division thing, there's a lot of theories and a lot of speculation. But nobody really has a theory, because you would have to lock people up. Remember what Bart says, you'd have to lock people up for a lifetime and take biopsies and actually check exactly what's happening to be able to determine, the turnover, cellular turnover rate, and the key drivers, and what you can actually do, whether you're testing for deuterium, whether you're testing for many other compounds, or multiple compounds. So that would be a very difficult experiment to do, to determine, to give you a definitive answer. But what we do know is, if you maintain better mitochondrial health, you definitely will live to your maximum potential. That's all we know. And we've done that with experimental rats, where we've doubled their lifespan from 2 years to 4 years. Now, that's massive. That would be like a human going from, the 100 and the 75, what is it now? The average is about 70 something, going from something like that to all the way, if you average it out, probably about 75, going all the way, doubling that, going all the way out to 150 years. What Chafee says, and Anthony Chafee and a couple of other people talk about. So that would be high optimization. Some people say you could probably push that out through biohacks all the way out to 200 years, maybe. Hard to say. There's a lot of question marks on that. As we said, we don't have any research, so we can't base it on research. There are historical anecdotes of people that are pastoralists, that ate primarily just animals. And we know that there are stories amongst them that there were people that lived a very, very long life. Okay? You'll never find a plant-based community anywhere in the world that has longevity, and you won't find a pure vegan society, multiple generational vegan society anywhere on the planet. They don't exist, and even when societies have very little animal intake, very little, what happens on them? They shrink in size. They become dwarfed. And we know that from the population that they found on that Indonesian island. I forget the name now, but you know what I'm talking about. So, look, yeah, that's an absolutely difficult question. I'd love to know myself. NTL, how are you, mate? Is consuming tap water, which has a level of deuterium as sugar, will contribute to cancer causing? Potentially. Yes, potentially. Do we have any research to show that? No. But we do know quite clearly that high deuterium does cause problems. So I would say accumulation of deuterium from any source is going to be a problem, especially if it's a source that can get into the cytosol and then potentially get into the mitochondria. So this is why I don't believe that tap water, is a good idea. I don't see tribal people taking water with them. I usually point that out to people. Look at tribal people. Not one of them takes water with them. Not one of them consumes water. The only people that consume water are agriculturalists. You never see a tribal person having dysentery. You see agriculturalists having those sort of things. Why? Because they're drinking tap water or river water. Why? Because they're eating carbohydrates. And you only get about 0.44 metabolic water from eating carbohydrate, and it is higher in deuterium as well. So that means you've got less, like 0.66 per gram of water less from carbohydrate metabolism. So where are you going to get the extra water? This is why people, when they're on a high carbohydrate diet, they're very thirsty. They need more water. So when you're on a low carb, fat actually produces 10% more water, from 1 gram to 1.1 gram of water. So, that's the difference in terms of water production. And it's deuterium depleted, or low in deuterium, which means that the body can actually deal with the 115 parts per million. But once you get over 130, it becomes more of a problem for the body to deal with. So, animal foods are much lower. Grain-fed animal foods are usually around the 120. They're still in the safe zone. Grass-fed are in the 113, 112, 115, around that mark. So way better. So yeah, but it would contribute negatively. Let's put it that way, until. So that's why as you know, I use Evian water for my coffees and stuff like that. I minimize the amount of drinking water. Most of my hydration comes from fat, by becoming fat adapted. That's the only problem, is until people become fat adapted, they can end up dehydrating themselves, and so may need to consume certain water until their own systems upregulate their antidiuretic hormones and access more water from their own from their fat stores. So it takes time for that adaptation sometimes for some people, more than others, depending on a whole lot of factors, mitochondrial health and many other things. G'day, Mike. Usually it's carbohydrates, mate. That's all it is. Now, you can get a slight increase in triglycerides, a slight with exercise. That can happen. It's just the body going, oh, we need more energy, and exporting it out. And then it's not an issue. You should never, ever, ever exercise before you do a blood test, because it can actually confound it. So you want to go fasted without having exercised, then go and actually get a blood test, and then that will give you a proper reading, a baseline reading of your triglycerides. And if they're high, you have to start looking. If you're on a carnivore diet and you're getting high triglycerides, then you've got mitochondrial problems. You're not able to process, and you'll know that because you can't lose weight as well. You're struggling with weight loss as well, many other things, or healing and stuff like that, because you've got problems with mitochondrial respiration. So then you have to sort of fix, like the cancer people do, fix their mitochondria. You'll have to do something similar, and then that will correct your high triglyceride levels, if that's what's driving it. So it depends, there are a lot of factors can drive it. Stress can also, high cortisol, also things like, severe fasting can also increase your triglycerides. That's normal. That's just energy that your body is actually trying to get out to your body. So there's a number of factors that can actually do it in a number of people. If you've got ApoE44, which is a specific gene, they tend to basically drag in remnant chylomicrons at a much faster pace and re-export at a much higher level their triglycerides. So if you actually do the test at the time that you've actually had a big bolus of food, like let's say you had a very late meal the previous night, and then you go and do a blood test, you may be still pushing a whole lot of chylomicrons through and exporting a whole lot of, so your VLDL, your triglycerides will be up, and so will your LDL to some extent. So there's a lot of things out there that potentially, how quickly you utilize that energy because of mitochondrial issues. So it's a much more complicated thing to answer. G'day, Lukey.
Hello, Harry. How are you doing?
Pretty good.
Just getting my brightness adjusted.
You can taste it. Yeah, well, if you're tasting sweetness in the actual tap water, that's probably minerals. Otherwise, it's a placebo effect, and you're basically deluding yourself. So, it can't be anything else. There's a few people here, Santa Claus cotton. See, Jenny, a couple of people actually are putting a queue in front, which is nice. I'm getting them trained. Why can't you exercise or lift weights when taking Physitin? Look, the reason we don't want, because when you're actually exercising or you're lifting weights or you're doing a whole lot of things, what happens is your body starts running a whole lot of enzymes and a lot of other things. I don't want that happening. I basically want you in a state where, and we do it at night, remember, in the evenings. I want to take in the taurine, amplify the melatonin, get the melatonin to amplify the Physitin effect, and I want a strong senolytic effect. If you're basically out there doing a whole lot of exercise and stuff like that, you're actually pushing a whole lot of different hormones. You're affecting a part of the endocrine system, and also you're affecting a whole lot of other functions, and you're probably not going to get as good results in that regard. It's like, if the digestion is working very hard because you've eaten a big meal and stuff like that, your brain's gonna, the energy, there's going to be a lot more priority to the digestion rather than the brain or other parts. That's why it's always better to exercise in a fasted state. So it's these sort of things, these sort of little things that it's sort of keep things separate is sort of the approach. Then we've got less confounding issues. It's not like it's like a game change, a massive game changer. Not. I've never argued it's like that. It's just keeping things separate, because you still have to have something, like you still have a fat. You still have to consume it with fat. Like I use cream, dairy cream, and mix it up and all that, because it is fat soluble. That means it will only be uptaken well with a fat soluble source. So I pretty much have it in the evening where I've already had my meal much earlier, and I'll have it in the evening with cream. I'll mix it in cream and, drink it down in the cream, so that's how I sort of get it in my way. Others just will drink the tablets and drink the cream separately. Personally, I don't really care how people do it. That's their business. Both ways will work. In the end, the protein those sort of structures will break down of the actual capsule, and you'll pretty much absorb the stuff. At the end of the day, you do need the actual cream, but you need bile salts. This is where having good bile function, where taurine plays a role. One, it has a role in amplifying, but also it has a role in improving bile function, because you still need bile. Now, if somebody this is a thing that I didn't cover in my Physitin video, which I should have. I was going to do a bit of a follow on, and I forgot to do it. But bile plays a big role. So if you've, let's say, got a gallbladder issue and you've got very poor bile function and stuff like that, you probably will have to take bile acids with the rest of the Physitin sort of approach. Otherwise, you won't absorb the fat soluble stuff as well. So just keep that in mind for people who need to take. I've told that to my people who are on cancer, dealing with cancer, and are in remission now, but I haven't said it to the general people, so it's an omission on my part. So I probably need to correct that at some stage. Harry, how is it possible for us to derive about a third of our energy from the sun, simply being the sun? Say we'll boost the electron chain. Look, it's a speculation that we can derive about a third through cytochrome C. It's a speculation. It's one that Jack Kruse pushes around quite a bit. Now, what is optimal conditions? Optimal conditions would have to be midday, probably about 10:30 to 11 in the tropics to get that level of a third. So it's not going to happen in a temperate climate like North America or Western Europe or places like that. Not going to happen there. You can get yourself naked and walk around the city, amusing your fellow citizens and probably get arrested for indecent exposure, but you're not going to get much energy, believe me, in a temperate climate. And if you're in the tropics and you do that, they're probably likely to lock you up as a Western deviant. So unless you're in Africa, then you can get away with it in tribal areas. But otherwise, yes, I wouldn't recommend that approach in other parts. So at the end of the day, most people are not exposing that on that level of skin, so they're less likely to get that amount. They're going to get very little, maybe 5-10% of that. But is it a game changer? Not really. This is why me and Bart sort of disagree with Jack, and I wanted to debate him, but Bart didn't want me to upset Jack, so we didn't have a debate. But even though I do agree with a lot of what Jack says, so don't get me wrong, it was going to be a friendly thing, but I think Bart was just he was worried that I may become a bit more, let's say, excitable. I don't know. So, and maybe even he may have even mentioned it to Jack and Bart, and probably Jack probably said to him no, because I don't think he's debated anyone ever anywhere. So yeah, that's the case. My view is the research on this was done a very long time ago. I believe this is old research. I cannot remember. I think it's around the 1970s in Russia. And it was sort of like in a lab with high UV under very optimal conditions. And I don't think in normal free living humans you could actually optimize it to that level, personally. But it was very limited research. They were looking at, this was basic research, basic science, just looking at how do these things work, and how do photons affect different parts of the body, in particular the energy production centers of the body, the mitochondria. So that's where the interest was. But at the end of the day, yes, okay, you can increase the energy or the electron flow through complex 4. But is it really the big game changer? At the end of the day, are you going to, yes, you get a bit of an improvement in efficiency. If you're on a clean, species appropriate diet, never having really damaged your mitochondria or your ATP synthase, are you going to get any improvements beyond the 9,000 RPM? And you're still at that bottleneck. You're not going to get any more protons through the complex 5 than what you would otherwise. You just maybe be able to pump the gradient that faster. So getting in the inner mitochondrial membrane, getting the proton gradients up. Nobody's ever be able to. I don't know. I'm never satisfied with this view, because when I find a bottleneck, I go, well, there's a bottleneck there. Like I know other things. If you look at, I'm not going to give something away. I'm not going to do it. Don't shut up, Harry. That's for another video. That's for one that nobody's done. But there is like certain, people talk about, and then there's certain enzymes that, it doesn't matter how much, there's no real rate limiting effect, but I'm not going to go into it. That's for a video that I want to do without giving away anything. But here in complex 5, we've actually got a limit. So my sort of view is, really, does it make that much of a difference? So because, okay, you increase the amount of concentration gradient. So what? You're not going to get actually faster stuff going through the, you're not going to produce at any higher rate than the maximum rate that is possible through complex 5. So what's the point? Maybe it can be sustained continuously. That means that you don't have any little, drops. It's like 9,000 RPM continuously. You're not going to have any drop in the flow going through. Maybe that in that regard. But then again, there's the other end, the enzymes, where ADP, adenosine diphosphate, needs to add a phosphate group. There's an enzymatic step there that has it as well. That's a rate limiting effect as well. So okay, fine. You can go through that to cycle through each cycle. But even if you were to get to 100%, does that mean you're able to go beyond the sort of, proton flow is just making sure that actually is happening. But it doesn't mean it's going to actually, what I'm trying to say is nobody's really proved that if it's 890, or if it's slightly fewer or slightly more, 1 or 2 more or 1 or 2 less protons going through, is that going to actually reduce the amount of ATP in any big way, or it's any significant? It's when you look at these rate limiting enzymes, sort of say it's like the Krebs cycle. Fine, you can actually give yourself a certain thing. You can actually increase by 30% with taurine the actual, your Krebs cycle and all that. But that's the maximum those enzymes can actually do their job. So that's actually just like pushing it to the max. But that's not going to be there continuously. So I'm not that convinced. Let's put it that way. Anyway, it's one of those esoteric discussion pieces. You could literally go around in circles, bang your head against a wall. Especially when you've got very old research that looked specifically to understand this, and the rest is a lot of speculation, to be honest. Extrapolations and speculations. Anyway, so I've tried resisting drinking water the whole day, but by the time it gets to night, I end up giving into the surge, drinking a litre or so. Yeah, look, you're probably better doing it in the daytime if you're gonna have those issues, so you get better sleep at night. In that regard, maybe try going much higher on the taurine as well, which will regulate fluids in the body and may reduce your thirst as well. I've found that a number of people have improved homeostasis in terms of thirst by reducing, because if you can hold on to water by upregulating your antidiuretic hormones, so you may have to go to a higher dose of taurine, like something like 10 grams, and then that should reduce that problem for certain people, because it's going to hold on. So even though you're producing less metabolic water from fat stores or from fat oxidation, what you're going to do is you're going to hold on to that water better. By holding on and recycling low deuterium water, you're actually going to be doing less damage to yourself. Plus, at the same time, you're going to hold on to that sort of stuff to minimize the damage, allow healing to happen, and then the body to go to the next phase of being able to push stuff out again. So it's that's a long-winded way of putting it, but anyway. things can be psychological as well, so yeah. And I'm definitely, that isn't an area of expertise for me to be able to help you there. You may have to see somebody outside beyond me, so, and not salad boy. You're telling it's all about fruit. God. Speaking, I saw Joey debating the raw vegan fruitarian guy. Oh, was he? Okay.
Yeah, it's a recent video. I think he posted it like just maybe 24 hours ago.
Check it out. I haven't had look, in the last week or the last couple of days, I haven't had a chance. I've watched some of his videos. I do prioritize Bart's more than anyone else for the laughs, because a lot of this knowledge I've had now 12 years in this sort of stuff. I know a lot of this sort of stuff myself, so I'm not going to learn anything new. It's more Bart's the funny stuff, because Bart is entertaining in that regard when it comes down to pulling these pseudo crackpots apart.
Definitely. That's fairly enjoyable.
It's not my it is. It's not my focus on my channel. My channel is basically to bring to people's attention things that they haven't really heard anywhere else or are completely unaware of. So outside the box, esoteric things that people don't talk about, and things that need to be talked about. So it's like my recent one. I thought it would actually have more traction than it had, which was a bit annoying. But anyway,
that was actually so. Yeah, it was very informational, Harry.
That is the future for the rest of the world.
It actually had me like really thoughtful after watching that video. I actually sent it to a few friends, especially one here that is trying to lose weight, and I keep telling him, take a look at this.
Exactly. This is the future. If you go on a full 100% kibble diet, this is what happens to a society. So, there's, and as Scotty was actually, I think it was Scotty, I can't remember now. He actually said when he looked the video right through, he couldn't see the, like in a normal supermarket around the aisles, you'll find things like, meats and stuff like that, animal foods on the other. There was nothing there. Well, obviously, because they don't import any of that. It's just the only stuff that they had in the outer perimeter was the bulk rice, like bags. They were like, those cement bags, big rice bags.
Yes.
That's all they had.
Those.
Yeah. And that's an appalling way for a lot of people. It's the direction that humanity's going is.
Yep.
I mean, it's one of the societies that's got the biggest amputations of limbs in the world and the biggest amount of blindness in the world, just from the level of glycation in their system. It's just beyond a joke. So, that's what 100% kibble diet does to you. It collapses your society. People are dying young and dying early. And we're talking about, 2 generations. 2 generations that not even 2. It's probably about 1.5 generations. This is happening. What would this society look like in about another 2 generations? Is frightening. And this is the future they're recommending for everyone. Our dear friends at the World Economic Forum.
Yeah.
Our lovely overlords.
Yes, Santa Claus.
Basically. The fruitarian kept saying that meat is bad because protein takes more energy to digest. Really?
Yes, he did say that.
Well, that's stupid. That's a stupid
They think
argument.
that the thermic effect somehow means it's more strenuous on the body.
It leads to all digestion actually requires energy. Doesn't matter what you're eating. All digestion requires energy. It's the reason for why the energetic, the theory about the energetic expensive tissue hypothesis. Thank you for reminding me. The expensive tissue hypothesis. What it's all about, reducing the amount of energy required to digest in order to provide more energy for the brain, for a bigger brain. Well, no wonder they're getting brain fogged and brain shrinkage, the vegans, because one, they're not getting the nutrients, but also they're using far too much energy to break down all the cellulose and crap like that. So to process all that crap out of their system. So, they don't know what they're talking about.
No idea at all.
Completely don't know what the stomach will digest and break down. It just will take more hours with protein. But at the same time, the stomach does its job, and that's not a problem. And the amount of energy required isn't as high. It's actually more higher peristalsis and pushing stuff out of the actual gut that actually requires more energy. If you're absorbing most of that sort of stuff that's coming out of the stomach, your gut isn't doing as much work, mechanical work. It's the reason why greater mechanical work and greater wear and tear is probably causing diverticulitis and all that on people with high plant-based diets. So the guy's got things completely the wrong way around. And if there's research on vegetarians and vegans having higher rates of diverticulitis and things like that, people that are eating more plants than people that are eating less. So it's completely the opposite of what this person is talking about energy for digestion. So it's just wrong. Uric acid is fine because it is basically regulated at the kidneys. So any excess gets dumped out unless you've got high insulin. And if you don't have high insulin, you don't have to worry. It's only on a high sugar diet with fructose that creates a lot of uric acid from fructose. And at the same time, on a diet that he's on, and at the same time, it's much harder to excrete. So what? Really?
No, it's just crazy. He advocates for an 80% carb, 10% protein, 10% fat diet.
Yeah, and the thing is, all this about adrenaline and noradrenaline and norepinephrine and all that sort of stuff. When you do a ketogenic diet, very low protein ketogenic diet, yes, these stress hormones can go up initially in the first couple of weeks, and then they'll come down to a baseline. But if you're going a carnivore diet and you eat sufficient protein, that won't happen. And the reason why it won't happen is because you get more taurine. And what does taurine do? It actually down regulates back into normal homeostasis cortisol. And where cortisol goes, so do all the other stress hormones. And it also lowers reverse T3 as well. So together with eating more meat, you're getting more selenium. That also reduces reverse T3. So you don't get into these thyroid issues unless you're doing long-term low protein ketogenic diets or long-term fasts. So, otherwise you don't get it. And the only other people that do get these things people like fruitarians, people like that, where their thyroid is in the toilet as well, and they are falling apart. So really, it's these extremists that actually push the fat to very little, or their carbs to very little, or their protein to very little. That usually tends to do this, one way or another. So, but when you actually put in enough protein, which is what a carnivore diet does, you don't have this problem. No ancestral population ever did. So it's just was that the guy's name? Rob Bliss?
No. That's the famous guy. This was a lesser known one.
Yeah, that guy's in the tropics, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's you can actually see his rib cage and everything.
He's on Asia, insular Asia.
Is he still alive?
I think so.
Just barely.
Yeah. But it's funny because he eats grubs sometimes,
Does he? He's getting more protein there.
Exactly, that's what's keeping him alive.
Probably.
So the actual insects that are sometimes crawling in the fruit and everything.
Well, if he's eating insects, I mean, a lot of number of Southeast Asians do, and a number of Africans do as well, especially in West Africa, where they hunt them with special nets. So insects are very high in both protein and fat. So they're a very good animal source. Obviously, our dear friends at the World Economic Forum would like to put us on those sort of things because they have less greenhouse gases, less methane, that is, burping. Not farting, but burping. Yes. We're on the complete opposite. More, and more CO2. We're in a CO2 drought. We don't have too much. We have too little for plant growth.
Yes. That's where I agree with the rapids. We need more CO2, but not in the body.
Exactly. Yeah. Precisely. I mean, he doesn't realize that high CO2. Where do you find high CO2 in a human body? It's usually in a cancerous state. It's like most cancer people have higher. They excrete more. If you check the urine, like the pH of the urine, it tends to be like somebody doing carnivore, keto, whatever, tends to be lower, the pH. Well, in cancer patients, it tends to be more alkaline, the complete opposite.
Where I wonder where all those alkalizing diets came from. It makes no sense. If you look at that, it's like.
Yeah. I think there was a vegan that was actually died from cancer as well, taking a lot of alkaline stuff.
Yep.
So I'll leave it at that. This is not medical advice, and I'm not making any claims. But the guy was heavy into the alkaline sort of belief system, and it is higher in deuterium as well. Alkaline, alkaline water is higher in deuterium. So I'm not saying that it's the alkaline necessarily. Could be the high just deuterium that he was putting into his body. High deuterium water, high deuterium foods. Combination. Yeah, probably made things worse for him. If vegan is a bad diet, a raw plant-based is worse. At least cooking reduces some anti-nutrients, makes fiber, starch, and sugars easy to digest. Yeah, exactly. So even on that argument, he's wrong. Doing raw stuff is much harder on digestion as well. So if that's his big issue,
if that's his big issue,
yeah, precisely.
The biophotons, the vital energy is gone when you cook the food.
Freaking hell, yeah.
Definitely
up for a Darwin Award.
I was listening to that while sunbathing today. I was giggling by myself. Oh god.
Yeah, it's funny, these characters. They just talk such nonsense. Yes. Where are they munching on acacia bowl? I actually have seen them do, like they've got those lot of seeds and nuts, full of anti-nutrients, and they make those paste things, and oh god, how do I consume that crap?
What's that stuff called? Hummus? Hummus?
Yeah, they do it. They do it hummus as well. I've had hummuses in the past. Don't get me wrong, and I put olive oil in it, and I used to use it as a paste. I didn't mind it. Don't get me wrong, but it's not indicated.
Nah.
That was in my old days.
There's this stuff called tahini, which is made with like roasted nuts.
Yeah, I used to consume tahini back in the old days as well. Yes,
the vegans love to say it's such a good source of calcium.
Yeah, I used to make my rice, and I'd make some lean meats, which was basically like chicken breasts and stuff like that. I'd cook those in seed oil, lovely seed oil, and then yeah, exactly. In the bad old days. And pretty much that would then because that would just, and I had even a wok to actually to stir fry my chicken pieces in the wok. and I'd put it on top, and I'd use tahini, and I'd make a sort of a sauce and with olive oil and put it on top of the actual stuff. And yeah, I know stuff that I did. No wonder I nearly died from cardiovascular disease. Friggin' hell. Yes, Thomas. He said the cancer cells use glucose and glutamine as a source of energy. Actually, he's wrong. They can use anything. They can use ketones, fatty acids. They more efficiently use. You can use lactate. They more efficiently use lactate and glucose. Use glutamine as well, but it's not the only. There are a number of other, which are gluconeogenic amino acids, which they can use. So it's not only glutamine, So, and all this stuff is also used by normal cells. And this is why I usually say that using protease inhibitors, all you're doing is creating sarcopenia and wasting your own body away. And we know that people with high cachexia, high sarcopenia or problems like that, breakdown of tissue, if you're not getting enough protein, you're going to break down tissue. You're going to actually release even more amino acids and proteins into the bloodstream to be used by the cancer. So it's defeating the purpose. So why not feed your normal cells proper nutrition so they function properly? You provide enough nutrients and enough protein so your body can build enzymes and a whole lot of other things to work to function properly, and focus on fixing the mitochondria the right way by reducing the damaging effects of deuterium in the system and healing with good sleep, melatonin, taurine, these sort of things, blue blocking glasses, all this sort of stuff. That's what people need to do. Really, that's what people need to do. I usually wear these in the afternoon, and in the evening I wear the others. These are sort of like in the mornings, which is daytime now, I don't wear, because usually at this time you're supposed to be much higher in blue light. And then in the afternoon, as the probably around about 3 o'clock, as the spectrum starts shifting, I start wearing these sort of things. And that's 2 hours from now. And then in the evening, I start wearing the other stuff. Damn. Talk too much. My throat's becoming dry. Plus drinking that milk. Something didn't go down as well. There's double reason. Anyway, yeah, so yeah, I disagree completely. Protein isn't the problem. Never has been. The people that are basically going into remission, my people, are actually eating a carnivore diet. They're not cutting back on protein. They're eating just regular amounts of protein. I usually tell them to consume about 25%, and the rest in the early days, to stick to around about 20% and do about 80%. So they maintain their body. We want them to maintain their lean body mass, because that's going to be healthy. That's going to protect them. And we want to basically increase the fat and bringing in the water, the low deuterium water, to dilute the deuterium in the body. We want to flush out the deuterium. There's too much in many of these cells. There's just too much deuterium in the cytosol. Cytosol is the area around the nucleus, or in the cell. It's called the cytosol. That's where there's a lot of what we call 2H. That's deuterium, 2H, which is a form of stable isotope of hydrogen. So in reverse Krebs cycle, what it does is it drags shitloads of 2H in to produce lactate. Because the cancer needs glucose, and you get glucose from, either directly can use lactate, or produce, if the enzymes are available to work, you can produce lactate, you can convert it back to glucose. So these are the things that it's doing. It actually, just from a certain amount of glutamine that may be in an animal food, obviously collagen type animal foods like collagen and connective tissue, gelatin, things like that will have much higher levels of glutamine. And I don't recommend those things. I just say to people, eat a normal steak. And that if your body needs to produce more, it'll do it from the essential amino acids in the steak. So I don't recommend people take collagen supplements if they've got cancer. Okay, we don't want to flood the body with too much glutamine, but we want some in there for the normal cells. And so when the normal cells are competing for the same amount of amino acids, at the end of the day, the cancer cells aren't going to get much from that. Their prime usage will be reverse Krebs cycle, lactate, and that. Now, we want to impede that whole process. And it's not enough to basically say, well, stop glutamine. Well, if you're in reverse Krebs cycle, it can use other amino acids as well, and another breakdown products of proteins that actually get released in the bloodstream. They can be used as well. So what's the, you're not achieving anything. You can still pour those in, and you can still pour those in and produce more glucose. But if you impede that whole process by flushing out the critical component that it needs, which is deuterium, to basically support the production, well, you're going to be starving it from, the ability to produce lactate. And if you're starving it from the ability to produce lactate, well, that's the critical part, isn't it? Because, just think logically. If the cell can't, it's going to do two things. Either they're going to die, go apoptotic, and this is what a low deuterium diet does with taurine. It causes greater apoptosis of the cancer cells because you really put them under a lot of stress by doing this. Or you reverse them back into senescent state, and then with senolytics, you knock them off. So, as I said, the people are reductionists. They are viewing cancer takes this and uses it. Whoopee. So do normal cells. But how do we stop this from actually happening? How do we reverse the condition? That's what they're not telling you, because that's what they're missing. Laszlo's got the deuterium side over here, and he understands that, but even he struggles because he's going, well, I'm reversing this condition of cancer, but not everybody, and we can't go very low on the deuterium, because if we go very low, the cancer gets normalized to that lower level. No, it's not, Laszlo. You're wrong. That's where Laszlo's wrong. Because basically what's happening is, it doesn't matter how low you lower the deuterium in the cytosol, in the body. In the end, you want to reverse that cell and make it functional again. To make it functional, you need to basically repair it to actually reestablish oxidative phosphorylation, the electron chains, to work again. And when you do that, they will send out a signal, the mitochondria, and say, we can produce enough energy for you. Disable the reverse Krebs cycle, turn it in the other direction, start pushing through fatty acids and glucose and all that, so I can oxidize in the mitochondria and produce ATP. That's what happens. That's the reversal. That's where the success comes from, by reversing that Krebs cycle back to a normal state. So it's a multi-pronged approach. So that's what Thomas is missing. And where Laszlo's missing the point is with, he understands the sleep, the melatonin. He's got that right, that melatonin repairs the electron chain, but you can amplify that repair with taurine. That's the missing link that he's got. He understands. So he understands that you can use that melatonin helps with repairing the electron chain, and that, so he understands that part, but he's not doing it as well. And the reason why he's not doing it as well, because he doesn't realize he's missing one link. That's taurine. And then again, it's the issue with the too much protein is a problem, because Thomas and many others have been telling them that for years, and they are wary of too much protein. But if you get more protein, you get more taurine. The taurine goes in there, heals it much faster. The thing works much faster. You reverse the whole process a hell of a lot faster, and you end up like that other lady that we won't mention her name for privacy reasons. Completely, you go into remission, and there's no cancer to be found in a scan. Voila. So yes, when they have those sort of successes, then they can come and talk to me. Until then, they've only got part of the picture. Seems like a 1-to-1 out of leisure. I don't know. Some people maybe on hotter days. I mean, I've been known on hot days to basically drink down some, liquid fat, which is cream, and pretty much, I don't have any whatsoever. Like I will exercise and I'll drink a bit of liquid fat and leave it at that. And I've got no interest for water after that, after a training. And you go, really, Harry? No, I don't. I'm just giving myself water, and it's lower deuterium water as well. So I'm very careful about those sort of things. Putting in the wrong water.
I have to say, Harry, that I need to work it up to that level, because I was actually talking to a few others about this, but from my experience, my thirst has gone down a lot. I can actually get by with very little water every day, but it's like, and this is like just psychological, really, but I just feel like
as well for some people, yeah.
I feel like sipping on something. A lot of people say that they like just like to drink something, and I know it's not needed. I know that I can probably get by with much less water than I'm doing nowadays, and I've even done so occasionally. I've been trying to get it down, and I actually noticed a difference. I'm probably like deuterium depleting, because like I can actually notice a difference in energy levels, but it's hard to maintain, because sometimes I just feel like drinking something.
Do I have to answer that? You've already answered that yourself, NTL. Yeah, people that are not fat adapted are going to have a whole lot of issues. Not only energy production, you're going to have basically, it's no different than somebody that's actually used up all their fat stores. They'll end up with having this, what they call rabbit starvation issues. So if you can't access fat for whatever reason, doesn't matter what reason it is, you can't access fat, and you're not fat adapted, then yeah, you're going to have problems of these sort of things. So it doesn't matter why it's happening. It can happen, as I said, you're not fat adapted, you don't have fat stores, you've depleted your fat stores, you're not eating enough fat, and you're not fat adapted, all these sort of things. But yeah, you pretty much answered and I think I've covered that multiple times you've probably heard anyway. So anyway, Paul Cellular says he probably consumes 150, 200 grams of carbohydrates per day. Doesn't try to track it precisely, but stated that 400 per day. Factoid. Don't know. Look, some people have actually said that Paul had actually consumed some day up to 400 grams, and he's, I think, now retracting that and saying he doesn't actually, track his carbohydrate intake anymore. So, it wasn't. I remember it was a live stream that somebody brought it up as a question to Bart that he consumes this amount. Bart doesn't actually view many of Paul's videos. Occasionally he may do. And the reason for that is, again, because Paul's can be quite vindictive and go after you, suing people and doing all sorts of actions. So you've got to be careful with Paul. He's one of those sort of people. Yeah. So he doesn't like criticism whatsoever. he likes to dish it out about towards other people, but never, or argue against other people's opinions, but never likes to take it himself. So, and people have challenged him, and yes. Daniel goes, who has Salad Boy sued? Well, we know one person, Frankie, but he went too.
Yes.
But Frankie went too far.
Yes.
Frankie went way too far. Started making all sorts of assertions, which were absolutely without foundation. They were just made up. And so, yeah. What we criticize, when it comes to Paul, he will actually go after people like with YouTube. He'll sort of he'll message YouTube that this person and report them and sort of create issues for them. That's how he deals with people like that. Now, Frankie went the next level, started making all sorts of assertions, and that's where Paul then took legal action against him. So, and Frankie had gone too far. It's one thing to criticize a person on, their inconsistencies and what they're arguing and are inappropriate. And another thing is accusing them of certain things where they've got no evidence whatsoever, especially for things that Frankie does himself on some of these has been, Tristan said that he'd actually watched some videos of his. I wouldn't have paid or watched them personally. So completely zero interest. But, obviously some people wanted to find out exactly what was going on and make videos about it. So, but if you dish it out, be prepared to sort of receive some of that sort of nonsense as well. But yeah, look, I don't know whether it's 400 grams, but 200 grams or, but he's pretty much, he says he doesn't track anything nowadays. And that's probably as a defensive thing. So he doesn't have to argue the point with anyone, because then he's got his own supporters say, oh, he doesn't eat that much. And then others will, so, and even if he is, nobody can argue that point because he's not tracking anything as he's telling us. He doesn't really care. Well, basically what we can argue then is if you're not tracking what carbohydrates you're intaking, then you're basically on a mixed diet, mixed macro diet, and you're engaging the Randall cycle. So that's how you deal with a person there. And you're only engaging at a very low threshold because you're doing a lot of exercise. But once you wear and tear and get older by doing a lot of that contraindicated cardio, you will pay for it and you'll stack it on very fast and you'll have issues with your pancreas. No different than Tim Noakes had or many others that have consumed that way, mixed diets for many years when they were athletes. So you can get away with it for so many years, but not forever. You will pay for it in the end, and he will pay for it as well. And so, here's another person who his ego is, as they say, his ego is cashing in checks that his body can't. He's writing out checks his body can't cash in the long run, and he will pay for it as a consequence. So there's plenty of people doing that. And also not consuming enough sodium as well. That's another issue as well. Can be an issue in itself. But it's the regulation of the electrolytes of the ions with taurine by eating enough meat, which is critical. Because as I consume more animal foods and cut out the water, what happens is you upregulate your antidiuretic hormones and you retain more efficiently a lot of your electrolytes. So too much water tends to dump them out. That's another issue with too much water, electrolyte imbalances, especially in a state where you're not getting enough taurine in your animal foods to get enough taurine or the flesh of animals. Yeah, look, nobody knows, Daniel, exactly. I suspect it's much higher because he did make those claims that he was consuming, about 100 grams of, more than 100 grams of honey, and that he was eating all these other fruit plus he was eating enough number of other things, some tubers and stuff like that. So, I think there was some rice in there as well. And if you put all that, it's probably getting into those sort of levels. But, the end of the day, Bart can only go on what people, and what he's heard in the past and what he's heard from, him putting out. Now, if he's making other claims now that he's, not tracking anything, I wonder why he's not tracking anything. So, and if you are going to complain about poor consuming carbohydrate, you should complain about Ted Naiman doing exactly the same thing. Yeah, well, I disagree with both of them in that regard then. Yeah, I didn't know that Ted was doing that amount, but if he is, I haven't seen any of his stuff for years now. So, but if he is, yeah, well, most of these people, in the old days, 70 years ago and all that, when I was looking at low carb down under and looking at a lot of these other places and all that, I came across a number of these characters, listened to them. I realized that they were just regurgitating a lot of the old, either low fat myths of the vegetarians and vegans and people like that, or they were just espousing a lot of the, in particular in the low carb community, Ted and others, a lot of the nonsense that was there in the paleo community. I was only in the paleo community for a very short amount of time until I realized that a lot of these things that they were saying were completely and utterly bonkers. Like they were saying, oh, there's so much estrogen in milk. And I go, really? What? 6 to 8 nanograms when your body produces as a male 53,000 per day? Really? And it's not even the estradiol, which your body produces. It's estrone, which is the 4 times weaker. And I'm going, really? They couldn't even get the actual biochemistry correct about what exactly is within milk, all these things, how they interact with the body and all that. So I realized very quickly, I go, nah, otherwise, I mean, if that was the case, the Messiah would have the biggest tits in the world. I mean, really? Biggest man boobs, you know what I mean? Anyway, got to be colourful. So, yeah, it's just bloody nonsense, and I realised quickly that these people were just regurgitating the same old nonsense that people talked about over and over again. And even with the IGF-1, that was another bit of absolute excrement. Now, there is a peptide that does carry a bit of IGF-1, but so little, it's like, minuscule. It's like your body produces like massive, and this is like, hardly detectable. So it's another irrelevant thing. And you're probably going to get more IGF-1 activation from the actual proteins in the milk than the amount you're going to take in from the actual animal. So it's completely irrelevant. And then the animal hormone, growth hormone, well, first of all, it's a different type of growth hormone receptor site, so it can't even actually connect to our receptors. So again, irrelevant, so you go, really? You guys believe this sort of shit? This nonsense? This make-believe? And it's just, people never looked into it, just regurgitating over and over again. And, when I come across these people, I just see them regurgitating the same old, never really looking any beyond under the bonnet and trying to understand, really, is this really what's happening, or what's the relationship? I mean, it's probably one reason why I don't really find a lot of value in a lot of other carnivores, to be honest, other than Bart and a few other people. I do find a lot of people still talk a lot of nonsense out there about a lot of things.
We have people to this day talking about omega-3 and omega-6 balance and things of this.
Ratios. It's garbage. And I've made that quite clear that it's garbage. But sort of had I've been able to sway him in a different direction on that issue. We've had our conversations on that point, and he agrees with me that it's not the case at all. So, and again, the other thing is, people, let's say in the carnivore space, people in the carnivore space go, well, I've got, and it's legit, people will say, they do a pure carnivore like meat-based diet, and they'll say, I've got certain symptoms and all that. And then there are genetic adaptations that I've actually done. There's videos coming, so I'm not going to cover them. And a lot of people aren't talking about those sort of things, and they're telling people to do this and do that, really. And I'm going, do you realize that there are genetic adaptations in the last 10,000 years, and these people have slightly different requirements of certain things for certain reasons because their ancestors have downregulated the uptake of these things or the synthesis of these things? And we're not like the Hadza to basically be pure, just ruminant meat, nothing else. There is the issue that a number of us may have these other genetics, and so we require certain other foods that are still animal-based that can furnish those nutrients, some being dairy, some being other things like seafood and other things like that. But so there are specific adaptations. And so you can't just say, oh, yeah, you can just get away on ruminants. A large proportion of population may, but not everyone. And then there will be a generalized population as well that I think, in my personal view, especially European population, which a lot of, the people that actually watch this channel, North Americans, Europeans and Australasians tend to have a European ancestry, including yourself, Lukey, that I believe that milk products, whether you're having cheese, if you're like lactose intolerant, you're having cheese, you do need a certain level of dairy product in your diet for the reasons that I will cover in future videos, So those are the things and all that, and it makes a big friggin' difference when you eat these foods. And when you take a paleo carnivore approach, you exclude these things, then you start having these issues like tachycardia and a number of other things. And people say, well, why is it happening? And I go, well, maybe if you consumed a bit more calcium, you would fix that problem. That should give you one of the reasons away. I've actually got that gene. If I want to induce tachycardia, I just take all dairy out and I'll induce tachycardia in my own self. And my heart rate will go up to the sort of the 90, 100 and all that resting. And when I put calcium back in, it goes right back to 40, 50.
Wow.
Because I've got poor absorption. Yeah, it's a video to be made.
Yeah. So looking forward to that.
I know. I've given away. I just gave away one of the things.
Just from a personal level, it's quite interesting because my great-grandmother, my mother, and my aunt, they all have had low bone mineral density.
All Europeans do because their ancestors were basically pastoral. You take a look. Northern Chinese have higher osteoporosis when they go to the West than the Southern Chinese.
Mm-hmm.
Central Asians, same thing. Most Europeans have higher osteoporosis. Why? Because they've got the same gene that I've got, a large part of the population, for lower calcium absorption. When you consume for thousands of years, high levels of calcium, which is contraindicated, you need to down-regulate the absorption. Now, we know protein absorbs more calcium, but there is a genetic reason as well, if your ancestors have been guzzling down, calcium rich foods. So you need to down regulate that, because our ancestors, like the Hudsons and all that, people similar to that, they don't have these genes turned on. Why? They've actually got the reverse. They're pulling in more calcium from the meat than we do, because that's their only source. They can do a pure ruminant because that's what they were doing. That gene is flipped in the other direction for most Europeans, for many others. So you think that calcium-rich foods are not indicated for you, like dairy or sardines and all that? Well, think again, mate. Think again, So this is why some people get into problems on a carnivore diet. And they go, well, why am I getting these symptoms? Well, because your serum calcium levels are too low. And then they take high doses of menaquinone 4, and they actually push their serum levels even lower. And what do I say? When you're doing high menaquinone, you need to be high dairy or cheese calcium and stuff like that. And I get some funny looks by some people. And I go, well, I know your genetic background. That's why I'm telling you that. So yeah, there's a lot of misunderstandings out there. It's like the Irish with their, they're low because of the high consumption of retinol-rich foods. Their low conversion rate of carotenoids, a well-known issue, so. Yeah, usually, Daniel, even the Anglo-Saxons, they were definitely pastoralists as well. So, yeah, they will have issues as well if they're not getting enough calcium. Yeah, we are not like the Hudsons. If you're European background, you're not like the Hudsons or Central Asian or whatever. You've been consuming quite a lot of dairy for many, many moons. That's why the Indo-Europeans were actually able to explode in numbers and conquer many parts, because they were using dairy to basically be able to feed 3 kids rather than 1 with enough nutrient energy. So it made a big difference to their explosion in population. They could actually increase their population 3-fold. That gave them bigger armies, because all they were, if a pastoralist doesn't have to look after, tend the land. So they're all either soldiers on the move, or they're looking after or herders.
Yeah.
Those are dual role. And even the Israelites were the same thing. They had their goats and all that, and at the same time they were warriors.
It's the same thing with the Mongolians as well.
Exactly. Yeah. Very much so. And that's why a lot of the actual, Middle Eastern civilizations and a number of European ones suffered a lot, because a lot of their population was agriculturalist, supporting, grain agriculture. A very small number of people that could do the fighting.
Yep.
And it was only when the Hungarians, for instance, actually developed these heavy knights and all that, and new tactics, that they were able to, and castles, so they couldn't pillage and all that and starve them out, and then attack them when they found them weakened, spread out. They would attack them and wipe them out, and that's how they were able to annihilate the Mongol hordes, with those tactics. Anyway, it's more military stuff. PE diet. I'm trying to think now. Which is the PE diet? Do you remember?
That's protein energy thing, where
something along that.
The guy puts an emphasis on like getting an X percentage of your calories from protein, and that's the idea to drive weight loss, because it's basically based around the protein leverage hypothesis.
Okay. Yep. It's a bit like what the bodybuilders do. They have a lot of energy with protein initially. They build up, and then they cut, and they take out pretty much the energy source, carbohydrates and fat, and then just lean out. A bit like those rats that leaned out from a high protein thing. Yeah, it's doable, but it does have some deleterious effects as well. But you can lean out quite a bit that way. bodybuilders have been doing it for ages, so it's nothing new. So it's something similar to that. Yeah, fair enough. I don't think Bart was actually claiming anything. Other people had told Bart that that Saladino was doing these high amounts, and so Bart was commenting on what other people were saying. And who really cares exactly? Who really cares what Salad Boy's doing? Really? I mean, exactly. I mean, even if he's doing 100, it's still contraindicated. It's not going to do him a lot of good. So yeah, and it's mainly fructose, which is very glycating. Depends on the clearance. Normally, like Robert Lustig actually did a video on this and actually explained that initially the belief was, and it is valid, and that was done in early animal models. So and these weren't in large amounts. So in a smaller amount, when you actually put an equal amount of glucose and an equal amount of fructose, the fructose is 7 times more glycating than the glucose. But if you engage the Randall cycle on what they call a high fat, which is basically a mixed macro diet with a lot of seed oils and refined sugars, that's what they call a high fat diet. There for the mouse chow and stuff like that. When you give them higher and you engage the Randall cycle, at that stage, and you've got circulating sugar for much longer, not clearing out of the bloodstream, the level of glycation can go up tenfold. So under Randall cycle activation, it can actually go another threefold up to tenfold. And that's why Lustig nowadays says, in today's modern world, the way people are eating, it's tenfold. Robert Lustig's been saying more recently. And that's true, but it's due to the Randall cycle that he doesn't understand. But that is true what he's saying, that it is 10 times more glycating. They find that the actual protein structures have 10 times more glycating factors when they give a certain equal dose and they look and do a comparison. And the reason for that is because of the Randall cycle activation, because these animals are being given the standard chow, which is activating the Randall cycle. And that's where it's missed, where the old studies weren't, they didn't do this, they didn't have this commercial chow that was produced by a food company for research. They were just being given, the animals back then were just given the normal food that a rat would eat. And so it did not engage the Randall cycle. It was sort of a more low fat type chow, which is more grain based and stuff like that, which meant that the actual animal didn't engage the Randall cycle. So, the consequences of certain things, but this new chow, as they call it, the mouse chow, the high fat mouse chow, that's deliberately been made in order to sort of mimic the human SAD diet. And that's what it is. And under those circumstances, because you definitely are having this effect. Yeah, so it's all about the Randall cycle. If you're not engaging the Randall cycle, it's going to be 7 times. If you're engaging the Randall cycle, so a fruitarian would get 7 times the glycation from, fructose, where somebody engaging the Randall cycle is going to get 10. That's the difference, just to clarify that point, because I don't think anybody's clarified. I haven't heard anybody clarify it that way to clear it up, the difference between the old evidence and the new evidence. It's not that the old evidence is invalid. It's just different physiological state. So we need to be clear about that. Otherwise, we're invalidating evidence, which is not invalid. But yeah, and people are saying things, oh, no, it's wrong, there's 7. No, it's not wrong. It's valid in a low-fat state. It is valid. But in a mixed macro, modern, SAD diet, yeah, it's a different story. Darcy, how are you? I haven't seen you for a while. Dazzle and Susil, damn, you've changed your name again a bit, haven't you? Huh? Okay, just to confuse me. You know, I've got dyslexia or mild, so you're just basically trying to really, yes, get a giggle out of me, aren't you? I know. Anyway, fructose does not affect blood glucose, but does it raise HbA1c? Yes, it does. Since it is much more glycating, yes. Yes, it does. It glycates all proteins and all fats in the body. So, yeah, it has a glycating effect throughout the body. It depends on the threshold or the dose. The higher the dose, the higher the glycation will spread throughout the body, the levels. The lower, if you've got very low amounts, you're more likely to have more glycating effects on the hemoglobin rather than as much on the cells. But you can glycate any protein, even the lipoproteins that circulate in the bloodstream, or also they can also get glycated. Everything can get glycated, so it's not anything that circulates through the bloodstream can get glycated. And how much depends on the threshold of the fructose. So yeah, currently we only do that, but I think if we were to do proper analysis of lipoproteins in the body, we would realize, and looked at the glycating effects, which people haven't really looked at, we would realize also that this is possibly another avenue of causing problems to the lipoproteins creating stickiness as well on where they end up having a positive charge, where the glycocalyx in the bloodstream, in the blood vessels, have a negative charge, and rather than actually repelling each other, they become more sticky and actually that sugar also can actually have a collapsing effect of that structure of the endothelium. So yeah, it's not a good stuff. I wouldn't be putting it in my body anyway. And how does it? It's sort of adheres to it, because it's got a positive charge and there's a negative charge on the surface of the lipoproteins, the hemoglobins, and all that. There's a pericellular matrix that maintains a negative charge, and if you've got something which has got a positive charge, like fructose, glucose, and all that, they will stick and glycate. So that's the relationship. Anyway, Darkfield Carnivore tried reducing sodium, didn't seem to make much of a difference. Resisting throughout the day, just seems to push back to some intake at night, then in the middle of the night. Oh yeah, I talk about the water stuff and all that. Well, what sodium will do is it'll draw water, so it'll reduce the water in your blood, the amount of, in terms of the level of water, but that's not going to deal with the dehydration issue. I think the dehydration issue is largely coming from an issue where you've got too much deuterium, really, and the body is trying to, and you're not fat adapted and stuff like that. It's a question of, I think that's where it's really coming from, a lot of these problems. So deuterium depleted water can help with this, flushing out. And on the other side, trying to force oneself to consume more fat until they become fat adapted by diluting the deuterium levels. So none of us come here with an ancestral sort of health to a carnivore diet. We're all damaged, and the level of damage in people's mitochondria is escalating. And especially even younger people can have very bad mitochondria because they may have had a grandmother and a mother that consumed shitloads of inappropriate foods and did a lot of damage to their mitochondria. So what they passed on to their child was less than optimal, and then they damaged it quite a bit while in utero. And then even after, when it was born, they fed it inappropriate foods and actually did further mitochondrial damage. So you wonder why people have got fatigue as young people and have basically cancers as young people. Well, that's mitochondrial insufficiency. You can't produce enough energy. You got stuffed mitochondria. That's basically it, KL. And you need to heal your mitochondria. Good sleep, reducing blue light in the evenings, very important. Amplifying melatonin, very important. Even cereal products that Bart sells have a benefit because you can produce new stem cells, new cells with new healthy mitochondria. But obviously that's a very expensive option, and you're not going to get the same bang for your bucks in the short term. Long term, yes, you'll get a benefit, but short term. So if you've got deep pockets, yeah, it's an option. If you don't, you have to look at other approaches that are going to be, change things more radically to the existing cells and mitochondria. So it's really important. You really have to lower the destructive deuterium levels in your body. There's no other option about it. A lot of people, I've been saying this for a long time, that people need to lower their threshold of deuterium in their body. If you don't do that, you're not going to heal the body effectively. You can still do it with a high-fat carnivore diet. It'll just take longer as you're slowly depleting and slowly changing the level of deuterium concentration inside the cells. But you're still going to be causing some damage and just lessening it and improving slowly but surely. That's why some people can take a couple of years before they really heal much better. And others that are young go on a carnivore diet and everything works like that because they've got very little damage. It's just, shit happens. Sorry, but such is life. We're all dealt different cards. No, he doesn't. Definitely not. I mean, that's the same thing with me, because I'm fat adapted. I was able to do a 3.5 day dry fast. Most people would basically have a lot of problems trying to do even a day because I dehydrate so badly. And all I was doing is just little peas. I would go twice a day, and it would just be like a couple of, it'd be like, some people that have probably got prostate, and you only have a few little bits that drop, and you go, is that it? Well, that was it, twice a day. Very little. It's just like, oh, there's just a bit that's accumulated in the bladder. It's decided to come out. So, yeah. Oh, you've been in there for quite some time, have you? Oh, okay. You might as well come out. So that's what it felt like. It wasn't a lot of peeing. I know I'm exaggerating. Okay. We've got to have a bit of fun. No, it was still a normal stream. Don't get excited or it's not going to cause me prostate problems. No, you'll have a normal stream, but it'll just be like, rather than actually going there and sitting and then going, oh, is this going to be over? When is this going to be over? Like in the bad old days, I remember in my carb eating days, I'd go to the toilet and you'd just be pissing and say, bloody hell, how much water have I got in there? Where now you piss only for a very short amount of time and that's it. And when I was doing the dry fast, it was just a very small, like a couple of seconds, 1, 2, 3, that's it, done. It wasn't a couple of seconds and you were done. It was a stream, but it was quick and wipe yourself and go. So that was pretty much it. It makes a big difference. But in the old days, I definitely couldn't have done that. So I was very damaged from, and I've still got mitochondrial damage. Don't get me wrong. I'm not claiming that. What I've done is I've reduced my deuterium levels, but I've still got mitochondrial damage that I'm still healing. And I know that because every year I feel I have more energy. That's telling me my mitochondria are slowly starting to improve. Where a couple of years back, I was struggling to be able to go up a flight of stairs. Now I can jog up. But that's because my mitochondria have improved. They're producing more energy. They're not still at the optimal level. They're not still like when I was young, where you can just really your body works really well. You can heal fast, you can lose weight fast, you can do all these things. Why? Because you've got really good mitochondrial density. But when you're more damaged, all these things are slower. That's why a lot of people my age, 56 and older, or around this age, have much slower progress on all these fronts. But don't give up. Don't, the reason is because you've done so much mitochondrial damage. And I did because I consumed shitloads of seed oils. So even though I've brought down the threshold of deuterium in my body, I've still got a lot of the damage that I'm healing slowly. And that's why the blue light and all that. Why do you think I go extreme on all these things? I don't do it for a joke. I do it deliberately to lower the level of damage and to try and amplify the healing. So I can eventually, in the next 4 to 5 years, my mitochondria will be in a much healthier state, and I will be maybe make 100 years of age like my great-grandfather and over. That's what I'm hoping that I'll be able to achieve. But I'm not going to achieve that if I just sit back and say, oh, well, I've got all this damage. I might as well give up and just drink and, who cares, and just give up. No, it's just, it means, yes, you have to make a bit of an effort. You have to push yourself a bit for a couple of years. And so it's, as I say, Rome wasn't built in a day. Whoever bloody said that is annoying. But anyway. That's all the KL stuff about the urination. Yeah. Mine's semi-clean most of the time. So, and I get worried that it's not yet more yellow, basically. And I go, maybe I had too many coffees today or stuff like that. Because if I don't have any coffees, like no coffee, no water, no nothing, and I'm just on metabolic water, I get yellow urine. And it's not like a dark yellow urine. It's just because there's no protein there. It's only you only get if you get blood proteins and stuff like that coming through because you've got kidney damage, and that's just certain people, or from when I had oxalate dumping severely, I had some damage with my kidneys. I did get some really dark and some blood in the urine and stuff like that. That was true, but once you're just normal, it's just this normal sort of. I actually concerns me when it gets a bit on the lighter side, and I know maybe I've drank too much coffee. I've had too many coffees or whatever. So, in that regard, because your urine should be more yellow. If you take a look at all animals, what do? When they urinate out, it's yellow. It's quite dark yellow. It's not even light yellow. You're not supposed to constantly be drinking and constantly be urinating. It's not what humans or any animal in nature is supposed to do. That's, we just do it in the modern world because we really do inappropriate things. Logos. And, so Kyrie means Mr. in Greek. Hello, Kyrie Harry. So this guy's Greek. Can taurine fix any symptoms caused by thalassemia traits? I don't know. I honestly don't really know. I do know that that taurine can reduce the glycation, and I know from people in Africa that have got thalassemia type cells. It's slightly different. It's a modification. It's not thalassemia, but it's a modification of the actual, which is similar to thalassemia. What happens is sort of elongation, but and taurine actually tends to correct the red blood cells in those people that have got those genetics. I don't know whether it does it in thalassemia. I know it does it in those people who have got those specific genetics for malaria that protects them against malaria. And thalassemia is very similar. It's sort of emerged in high malaria sort of areas. But it's not, it's like, let me give you an example. It's like the genes for lactose persistency. The Arab ones are different to the Maasai ones, and the Maasais are different to the European ones and all that. They're not the same genes, but they all provide lactose persistency. And this just thalassemia compared to the one in Africa, maybe just another strategy to deal with malaria. And if it works for one, I'm not saying it will work for thalassemia, because I've never had anybody experiment, but you could try 2 grams. Remember, do check out my video. I do cover lithium and blood pressure meds. Very important before you start taking taurine, that you over 2 grams in particular. And you can take like 2 grams for a couple of months, then go and get yourself checked to see what's happening. Then try 4 grams. I think that other guy was doing 6 grams all up. Or you can go straight to 6 grams. Well, not immediately. Go to a week on 2, a week on 4, and then go to 6. It will help you with a lot of other things, and then go after 3 months and test your red blood cells and see what they're like. And I'd be really interested to know. I would honestly be have a lot of interest. I know it does work for the African genetic predisposition, but I don't know whether it will work for the thalassemia you find in sort of the Middle East, Europe, and stuff like that. So, but I'd be interested, because the condition is similar. Its reasons it came about. It just is using slightly different genes. So I would like to know, does it work also? I sort of think maybe. I'm silently confident, let's put it that way. But I'm not going to say, because I'd be a crackpot if I did. I'm just saying I'm silently confident and speculating in a positive. I think I may be onto probably be onto it. Yeah, but I would definitely check out doing that at minimal, getting up to 6 grams. Some people have tried a bit higher. Some of my African descendant North Americans that have tried it, and it actually has worked for them at higher doses. They even get better results. But as I said, there are other complication issues they have to take into consideration. So yeah, but I'd be really interested, because I have not had anyone with thalassemia that actually has been able to, that we've actually been able to experiment on. So you're my new lab rat, my dear friend. Το καινούριο ποντίκι. Ερευνητικό ποντίκι. I just said experimental rat in Greek. So yes. I like to put taurine in a glass of milk. Well, Dad puts it in his yogurt, so he doesn't like it in water. I just drink it in water, just like that. He goes, so he just puts it all in his yogurt, and he has an evening yogurt. So pretty much he mostly has it with his evening yogurt. In the morning, he has it with cream. He's got used to now doing it with cream, putting it in and mixing it, and then drinking it with cream, because he does also his Physatin as well in it with cream. So yeah. Anyway, more of a salad boy and many others. Yep, which we can produce through gluconeogenesis. We don't need 1 ounce more, and it doesn't. And all these people that say, "Well, doesn't gluconeogenesis, isn't it stressful on the body?" No, it's just another enzymatic pathway. So glycolysis is an enzymatic pathway. Lipolysis is an enzymatic pathway. Is that stressful on the body? No. All metabolism of whatever is going to cause some level of ROS. So nothing is any more or any less. So whether you take it through you ingest it, and you have to go through a whole lot of metabolic steps to break it down and then oxidize it, or you produce it inside the body, what's the difference? There's probably producing it inside the body is going to be less stressful, because it doesn't have to be digested first of all. and go through a whole lot of digestive pathway. It just gets converted through a couple of enzymatic pathways, and then it ends up being oxidized or utilized. So, really? Somebody's got that wrong. Digestion is much more expensive in terms of energy than synthesizing something in your body. So, yeah. Time constraints. Oh, look, he's got some videos for me. Oops. Okay. Yeah, hold on. Oh, they've changed it. You know, they call it share now. They call it present.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they renamed it in StreamYard. I'm going, where is it? Oh, I'll present. Oh, that's right. Now you can actually present a slides, extra camera. So you can actually add an extra camera. Oh, like an experiment.
Oh, something bloody new for once.
Exactly. So it's probably, you know what, they've probably done it for the OnlyFans people, so they could actually have two-way cameras.
That makes.
That's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
That's what I'm thinking. And no, I'm not doing anything like that on this channel.
Yeah, that seems like an oddly specific bit of knowledge to have.
Repetins, when they find out their nervous system has lots of poofer, get this shit off me. Yes. Damn turds.
This is a long one.
Taurine. Yes. No money due to buying many magnesium supplements. Yeah. No compliance, just taurine, excellent skin shape and all that. Avoid use or nutrients depleting carbs. Taurine.
Oh god. Just had to get that performance again.
I just choked myself. For fuck's sake, Harry. Watching Harry Serpanos thrives on metabolic water from oxidizing fat. Eats metric tons of meat. Knows all the knowledge of taurine because he lives them. All electrolytes perfectly balanced of taurine. Exactly. Now let's look at these, veganerized virgin mag supers. Mag supers. Is that like soupy soups?
No, yeah. So that's
okay.
There are those memes of like the consumer or things of this sort. And these
okay.
And I'm basically alluding to the people that are obsessed with magnesium supplements.
Okay. No money due to buying different magnesium forms. Oh, that's right, because there's so many different.
Yep.
Constantly shifting from all magnesium supplements. Doesn't know what taurine is. Says mag is needed for hundreds of body processes, but can't name a single one of them. Stupid whole food diet is filled with carbs that drain his precious magnesium. Eats little meat, drinks lots of water, wastes his electrolytes. Yeah, well, even some in our community do that.
Yep.
Too much water. Trust me, bro, the soil is depleted. We've got a supplement. Yeah, that's the modern day. That's a modern day argument from all the vagunarized people that basically just say that's the reason. Scalar skin from the usage of magnesium oil. Yeah, exactly. But let's go back to this. Taurine. You must watch Harry Serpanos to get your electrolytes balanced. Eat tons of meat. It's a bit like, with Bart, and his steak and eggs.
Exactly.
Steak and eggs.
The national anthem.
Eat tons of meat. Eat tons of meat. And taurine. Eat tons of meat and taurine. Be a taurine-rich person, and you will always be happy.
I guess that fills our quota for taurine this.
Yeah, exactly. And I definitely like this profile. That is very much, yes, exactly. Exactly. There's nothing there. I'm not going to say it because YouTube actually monitors these things. So I'm not going to say it.
Safe.
There's very little here. Yes, there's the difference. Yes, eat meat makes a difference.
Absolutely.
Okay, I've had my little excitement for the day. Oops, hold on. Oops. Anyway, now, what did HD say? The whole camp of people who believe fungi play a large role in the emergence of chronic disease. I recall one Italian oncologist or researcher who believes fungi play a role in cancer. You got two camps here. You got one camp that actually says, fungi play a positive role, and others that say it plays a negative role. You got all sorts of people claiming all sorts of things. But remember, it's associated data. That's all it is. Healthy user bias. There's no sort of proof on a mechanistic level, and there's no proof on like a scientific level. Like proof. So no, yeah. Because otherwise, if people basically eating mushrooms, they'd be basically all cured of cancer, or they'd all be getting cancer. So I mean, it's just nonsense. G'day, Elizabeth. Hi, how are you? What about taurine to reduce myostatin after training? Is it true? Yeah, it does lower myostatin. I've been saying that where have you been hiding, Elizabeth? I've been saying that for some time now, that it reduces myostatin. So I think I've actually mentioned that to you before. You weren't paying attention, my dear. So yes. Anyway, I know English is not your first language, so I'm just poking a bit of fun at you. Yeah. It's not like it's actually like a massive myostatin inhibitor, but it does sort of lower myostatin to a certain amount, and it actually helps amplify. It's actually more helping amplify protein synthesis through amplifying leucine's effect, and also bringing in acting as an amino transport and bringing in more aminos into the whole process. So it amplifies the effect of muscle of protein synthesis, and then helps through the taurine, the TORT transporters, to bring in more aminos at the gut wall. So that sort of helps in increasing the amino pool, and then driving that into muscle protein synthesis by its myostatin inhibition and its amplification of leucine's effect to get it in to be utilized to build tissue. So it's, getting away from reductionism. It's this sort of synergy relationship. I mean, if you just gave somebody taurine and they're in a fasted state and gave them no leucine, you're not going to get much of anything in terms of muscle protein synthesis at all. You still need leucine. It's a synergy. Anyway, look at mucus race versus in blood every day. Videos coming out soon. Don't really know who you're talking about. Do you, Lucky? No, I don't. Sorry, can't actually. Is there somebody called that? No, maybe there is.
I think he's talking about stuff he sees in microscopy, but I don't know what he's referring to.
Yeah, look, there is a big fungal network throughout the entire ecosystem. Actually, before fungi existed, there was only dead plants on the surface of the earth. When was that? I think it was 160 million years ago, or was it more than that? I can't remember.
That's the carbonation.
It's when it's the time when there was a lot of absorption of CO2 came down quite a bit in the atmosphere, and there was a lot of dead plants around, and it was only when fungi emerged that they actually were able to release, by breaking down those, they were able to release massive amounts into the atmosphere, and it didn't increase the temperature. I wonder why. Yes. But according to the crackpots, it is nowadays, because it's morphed into something evil, because the World Economic Forum says so. So you can believe it. Okay?
Yep, definitely. They're absolutely correct.
Exactly. Yes. We would never disagree with YouTube or our dear friends at Google. They're always right. They're always correct. Yes. Yes. Carbon is evil. Evil. Oh, it's going to kill us all. Poor little Greta. Anyway. Did you Google it to remember which year it was? I just
I was just checking it so I think it was like 300 million years ago.
Oh, okay. That's probably better. That's more correct. Yeah, that makes sense, because complex life, sort of the Cambrian explosion 500 million years ago. Yeah, that makes more sense than 160. 160. What was that? What was happening in 160? I can't remember. Probably was something related to the dinosaurs. Okay. Yep. Anyway. Those who are those individuals who claim certain biohacks could radically extend life? Got me interested. Oh, there's a whole lot of people that talk about a lot of nonsense. And most of the stuff that they talk about doesn't really help. It's a waste of money. Some of these supplements are quite expensive, and they don't really do much. And ultimately, the best thing you can do is just eat a lot of animal fat and reduce your deuterium levels, and have your mitochondria really working well and healthy that's the ultimate secret to longevity. Good functioning mitochondria, not putting stuff in this high in deuterium that's going to damage them. It's not complicated, not rocket science. Are you saying we're all shrooms? That's why I love Shelley for that reason. She's got a wicked sense of humor like me. She'll come up with these sort of one-liners. Absolutely, that's why we love her. I'm going to save these other ones so I can into my special folder where I put all my little clips and images there under my YouTube folder. So I keep all these, and I usually do go through them for a bit of a laugh. I'll have to do someone like a video thing.
A compilation,
Compilation. Harry's
yeah.
favorite compilation, and they actually have like a I have to do that.
Just the other day, I was actually sifting through my folders, and I came across the Ray Peat's fried mitochondria one. Oh god!
Oh, that would have been funny.
Oh, that was one of my favorites. I was so inspired when I made that. Oh god.
Yeah, I got a few laughs out of that, and also the Vagoon ones you did as well. They were also
Yes.
funny. Some of them were really funny, or the ones that actually remember the ones that there was I think Richard did there was a couple that Richard did as well.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And who else?
I know that Blinkers did some.
Oh, Blinkers, it's Blinkers. That's right. Oh, yeah. I remember the. Well, I can't even remember what it was. Was it taurine where his dick became like big and massive?
Oh yeah, no, I think it was Bowerbirds.
No, L-citrulline. It was L-citrulline. It was related to L-citrulline.
I followed Harry's advice.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Oh god,
that was funny. That was funny. Yeah.
Oh, that's perfect. Okay.
Yes. That was really, really funny. I enjoyed that. Definitely best from fish. Yeah, creatine has a bit of an effect as well on myostatin. It does.
I'm not so sure. I'm thinking about,
but not, it. Look, bodybuilders say they've, it's a bodybuilder thing. I haven't actually, to be honest, I haven't really looked into it. I know that taurine definitely has a much higher level and amplifies, and I know creatine does not amplify leucine. So if it does have a myostatin effect, it's probably a very weak one in comparison. But I have heard of it in the bodybuilding industry that it does have a bit of a myostatin inhibition. It may not be a direct thing, it may be an indirect thing, by sort of the energetics of the muscles themselves. So maybe more that than really a direct effect on myostatin. So yeah, I'll have to look into it. Actually, I'll have to look into it. I've heard bodybuilders say it left, right, and center, alien drone, but I've never really looked into it. I don't know why. I never did, but I haven't. I'll look into it, actually. Let's see whether there's more bullshit there. Wouldn't surprise me if there was. But if you're training, I do recommend people do like at least 30 minutes prior, putting in 90 minutes for taurine, 60 minutes minimal, because it takes a bit longer to saturate the tissue for the myostatin effect. And then for things like creatine and stuff like that, it's usually half an hour before is fine. L-citrulline as well. And then after the exercise, I actually like people then to take the sort of the leucine. I'm not a big fan of BCAA because even some of the actual branched chain amino acids do have gluconeogenic in some regards. So I prefer people just take the leucine separately, or just eat more meat because they'll get higher leucine content in, which is what I do. I don't even supplement. I just supplement my father and older people because they don't eat enough meat. That's the only reason. But I don't, because I eat shitloads of meat. So why bother paying for leucine? There's this threshold of muscle protein synthesis. It's not. And if you're eating real meat, you're going to be getting really good quantities. 6-9 grams of leucine. So how much more do you need? Really?
So Harry, I don't know if you have seen this, but recently there's a new vegan product around. It's like vegan whey protein. It's like
God.
They're actually using bacteria to make imitate the whey proteins. And
really,
Yes, and they are like, see, it's got more leucine in it, and I'm like, oh god, you guys are basically admitting, but by like making such a product, you're
Exactly.
basically admitting that everything you guys had before was inferior. It's like,
Precisely.
why do
Yeah.
you need a vegan whey
Yeah.
protein?
Yeah. You're making something artificially which
Yeah.
doesn't exist in nature.
Mhm.
You know,
Yep.
and this is what the vegans say, oh, I can supplement that. Yeah, but you can't
Mhm.
get it in your diet.
Nope.
If I was to put you on an island with just real plant foods, nothing else, and you were to survive over 5 generations doing that, you would die out even before the first generation.
Mhm.
So
Exactly.
basically, your diet is contraindicated. It's not
Mhm.
indicated at all. It doesn't have the nutrition to basically guarantee, the perpetuation of a species.
Yep.
So you're just talking absolute nonsense.
They arguing about Paul's intake.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, that's my sort of response. That's demand-driven mechanism, or what the fuck? You need exogenous carbs. Exactly. We don't. We do not. We do not. And even when it comes to while, and I think even Bart needs to clarify this, because sometimes he doesn't clarify this because of his high functioning autism. He tends to basically say these things, and I'm anyway. He says excess protein. No, excess protein. Look, excess protein, yes, can go down the Cori cycle. Excess lactate can also go down the Cori cycle.
Mhm.
So these things do come in to the Krebs cycle, can be redirected. That's true. But there's a fundamental difference here, that there's also a peristalsis interaction at the gut and a
Yes.
stomach release. Your aminos, if you consume a lot of meat, it can take up to 8 hours to digest. If you
Yep.
consume a small amount, up to 4 hours. What is that telling you? That the body's regulating the amount coming in. So
Mhm.
you're not getting excess. This is why you'll find not one experiment that actually shows. Remember that video, eating high protein and no blood sugar in spike whatsoever?
Yep.
Doesn't happen.
Mhm.
If the body will use, if you've got excess protein, if it doesn't require it for muscle purposes, for that purposes, it can use it as a precursor for gluconeogenesis, but it's still going to be demand driven. It needs to
Yep.
clarify that, because he says it, but he doesn't actually remind people that it is demand driven. It's not outside the normal physiological range. It's just basically the demand driven
Mhm.
part. So yes, it can take either, it can use the glycerol backbone of triglycerides, and it can also use some gluconeogenic amino acids. So, and there are some amino acids that can be used both for ketones and for glucose, and some only, like leucine, cannot be used for
Mhm.
anything. It's really preserved for muscle protein synthesis, so you can't use it. But you can use some of the other branch channel amino acids. So, yeah, and at the same time, because they're going through the same pathways, you're inhibiting the uptake of sufficient leucine. That's why I don't like BCAAs. I prefer, maximizing the amount, especially if somebody's older and I'm trying to get them to, get a bit more protein synthesis. It's leucine and only leucine that I recommend with taurine supplementation, like my father does.
Mhm. Precisely.
Yeah, but he needs to remind people that it's not the excess protein that's going to create. Yes, we know that protein can be used. There is gluconeogenic precursors that are protein based, and triglyceride based. But at the end of the day, you're not going to do any more than your body. And if you get an increase, it only happens for one reason. If you're exercising, your body will overcompensate by creating a bit more. The dawn effect before going out for the hunt, it'll actually create a bit more. That's all it is. So if you measure at that point, you will get this jump. But if you go and do a blood test very early in the morning, you get the dawn effect. If you leave it for like about 10 o'clock and you go and do the test, you won't get the dawn effect. It's already over after that period. So, you're still fasted, but you're doing it at a different time and you're getting a different measurement, completely different measurement. So that's why you need to do multiple measurements and get the average.
Yeah, even things like TSH are very cyclical depending on which hour of the day you're.
TSH, T3, T4, they're all, they can vary through the day and all that. And I always say, if you've got hypothyroidism, you know it. Because if you've got, if you've got hypothyroidism, you're always running very low, your thyroid. But also the other thing is you're running very low. And if it's not exercise, due to exercise, see, if you exercise and you can't actually get your heart rate up sufficiently, it's really in the, you're struggling to get that's usually an indication of hypothyroidism or severe hypothyroidism. And if it's really way over, it also can be, that higher rate can also be like hyper too much, in the other direction. So, as I said, some people get very low and they can pass out from hypothyroidism. My sister was getting that sort of effect. So those are other things. We're not talking about now that somebody who is very like an athlete that's really exercised and actually gets their levels down to the 40s or 50s and all that, but then can jump when they're doing physical movement and all that quite easily. Mine, in the normal day, like in the morning when I wake up, mine is down to 40, 50. When I start moving around in the daytime, it gets to between 50 and 70. And that's the sort of really normal range you want when you've got light activity. That's where you want to be. That's but if it's way beyond that, like up to 90 or 100, I think about two things. One, I think about calcium. In my case, with my genetics, one, I think about calcium, and the other one, obviously, if calcium fixes it and it doesn't fix it, obviously the other issue could be thyroid related, but that usually is a chronic thing you have continuously. So it's not going to be in that case. It's usually just a calcium issue for me. But other people that are running very high heart rates, they do a carnivore diet and they're doing calcium and stuff like that, they're doing dairy and all that, and they're still running high. That could be from hyperthyroidism that hasn't been resolved. And others who are, so they've got that high heart rate, but it also could be the genetics and they're not eating enough calcium. Could be both. We don't know until you test. So you have to look for the antibodies and do the other tests and stuff like that. But if that's, and also consider, if I take more selenium and iodine, if that goes away, that means that I was just deficient in those minerals, and that's corrected it, and it had nothing to do. I don't have Hashimoto's, and I don't have a calcium issue. So you sort of have to troubleshoot a bit in that regard to work out what is the driver of that thing as well. But these are sort of like symptoms that give you a bit of an idea why you may have certain thing. So anyway, more of this, yes, more of that, yes. Basically biological ignorance. Lysine and leucine. any pure keto, amino acid as they degrade, precursors and ketones. Yes, once things get to acetyl-CoA, they can't go back the other way. That's it. Then they're in the Krebs cycle or in the other steps that cannot reverse. And pretty much like lipolysis goes directly in. It can't be, anything that goes into lipolysis through that pathway cannot reverse back in the other direction. So that is quite clear on that, in that regard. But, just because the body can use these things, it doesn't necessarily mean it will use them, It may use leucine and lysine. It may use some of the others for other purposes, but that's only because it's demand driven, because the body needs more. And it goes, okay. And this is why I say when people are concerned, I'm not going to get enough ketones. I'm going, really? If your body needs, you do have amino acids that can actually, ketogenic amino acids that can be utilized. And some of those also can be utilized for the purposes of sugar, glucose, but it's always going to be demand driven. It won't be beyond the physiological limit. This is the important thing we need to separate. They are demand driven. They're not beyond physiological limit. Yes, if you provide more of those, the body may utilize those. So if you actually have more protein, it may go, well, I'm not going to use glycerol backbone. I can pee that out, or I can use it for other purposes like glycosylation of, rather than producing glucose, additional glucose, I'll just use that glycerol fat and I'll use it and actually glycosylate the actual, all those glycocalyx are on the surface of the cells, that, all those little glycans and stuff like that have got sugar molecules. Well, I can use that to glycosylate those things. Why use it for glucose production? When I've got enough aminos, I can use those for that. The body will use either one, but it will still be within the physiological range of demand driven. It won't produce more. And if it produces slightly more, it will do it because you've signaled to the body, I'm physically a bit more active. I may need additional glucose for my brain, my red blood cells that are transporting basically additional oxygen for my additional exercise activity. And it goes, I better just produce slightly more. And that's where your insulin still, because the insulin to glucagon, remember, I've been telling you this for years, insulin to glucagon prevents overexpression of either one, which means that, you will produce more and you may have a periodic where glucose goes up in the bloodstream, isn't cleared out as fast because insulin isn't as high because glucagon is temping it under control, the insulin to glucagon thing. But that's nothing. That's not a problem. Just I do exercise and I get higher glucose, and you're going to be utilizing it. It's not going to stay in the system for too long to cause glycation or any problems. And it's glucose, not fructose, that glycates shitloads of time, which has to stay for quite a few hours, glucose, to have the same glycating effects. And it's not. It's a protective thing because the body doesn't know, the dawn effect. It gives you a bit of additional glucose and additional free fatty acids. Why? Because it says if you just woken up and you see a lion, you may have to run. You need that additional energy. Or if you see an opportunity to get an animal, you may have to move faster to try and get it. And you need that additional energy until everything starts getting ramped up. Got it? These are why the body does these things, and that is why, depending on the activity level and all these other things can go up or down slightly and all that. Stressed a bit, I'm studying hard, I'm stressed a bit, I'm going to raise slightly some of my glucose levels and release some of my free fatty acids if I'm in the low carb side. That's fine. It's giving me more energy for my brain to be able to function, to do that harder work, that additional processing that I need to do. So if I take a measurement, I go, oh, shocking. Really? Take it half an hour later, it's back to normal or down, especially if you're sort of relaxed. You go, oh, I've done those experiments deliberately, like doing maths stuff deliberately to see those things, and it exactly happens like that. So you start realizing very quickly that this is the way the body works. It senses, I'm going to do this emotionally. I've got the thought that I'm going to do these actions. oh, I better ramp up these things because we will need to have that stuff available for that person to do these things. You know, we need to get our head space away from this nonsense. You know, even demand driven is also anticipation driven in a sense.
Yep.
But it's still demand driven because it's
Yes. Yes.
anticipating the need. And sometimes it can overshoot because the system isn't completely correct 100%. It's anticipating something, an approximation. It's not it can't predict the future. It would be God if it could. So yeah, that's how crazy some people's thinking is when they don't understand this. This is what happens with reductionist thinking. And unfortunately, the majority of the world thinks in reductionist terms, and it's really bloody hard to get people away from thinking like that. And that's why they make up the nonsense that they make up, because of reductionist thinking, you know. And, you know, so shit happens, so to speak. Thanks, Kale. Taurine break for Harry. Thanks for the advice as always. Yes, you're welcome, mate. So I'm going to pull the plug. I know that I haven't actually answered everybody's. I see there's an Elfin is in there. G'day, mate. Good to see you. There's a few other people. We're up to a bit over 2 hours, and I did start my laundry earlier. I need to put it on the dry stage and then hang it up. So I do laundry yesterday. On Friday. Now it's all dry, that other stuff. I need to take that out and put the other stuff in. I had a coat that I basically got some mud on it, so I had to wash that with a couple of other, you know, things in there. So other clothing, underwear, and a few other things that I just need to put on the dry spin to reduce, and then hang it up before my next live stream. So I've got things to do, as people can understand. And who else is there? Nathan's there. G'day, Nathan. Is plastic cheese really so bad? It melts great on burgers.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Some carnivores that never learn. Like Nathan.
I've heard that
the problem, Nathan, is most of those plastic cheeses have seed oils in them.
Yeah.
That's really bad for your mitochondria. You know, really bad. You don't want that sort of stuff.
Terrible. Just plain terrible.
He's a bad boy. Now go to Yellow Ted's den and he'll give you a good whipping. Pro 4 TRD Pro. Good to have you here, mate. Preventer. I've got no problems with their water. It's fine. It's well done, Preventer. My criticism is that they are missing the taurine link to the process. They do understand the melatonin link that it helps, but the amplification of melatonin at night via taurine and the sort of the physotin amplification as well, that happens due to the amplification of melatonin. Anyway, so I've got no problems with those people whatsoever. They make a good product. I wish that all societies, and you're doing 85 ppm deuterium depleted water, it makes me very sleepy. Well, the reason for that is because you're still got mitochondrial damage that is going to heal, but when you actually lower the level of deuterium in your body, you're actually got less capacity to create like lactate and produce additional glucose from that. So that indicates to me that you've got some level of mitochondrial damage and you can't produce enough energy from fat. So that's why you feel a bit like that. Not everybody does. So that's your effect, because you're primarily a sugar burner rather than a fat burner, because of the underlying mitochondrial issues. But as they heal, as your mitochondria heal, you will switch and become a better fat burner and producing more, and you won't need to buy this water. What we're doing is we're flushing out the deuterium, and we're providing the taurine to basically improve the thing you can do is you can actually switch the actual deuterium depletion water and the taurine later at night to basically make yourself more sleepy, so you get deeper and better sleep, while at the same time getting the benefit. So you're lowering the deuterium level, you're putting in the taurine, you're amplifying the melatonin, and you're getting that sleepiness, which will give you deeper sleep and better reparative and better increase in. Use it strategically. So consume more of that in the evening rather than in the daytime. So yeah, and that was that one there. And I'm just quickly going before I actually pull the pin. Yep. So you Googled that and grabbed all that information. Good. And Jack Cruz, mythical quantum biology, light and EMFs. Yes, the EMF guy. Look, he's difficult to understand. That's true. G'day, Dom. Dom's just turned up as well. Dom's in the UAE, so he's having a good time there, meeting up with Sammy. Colin. No, Colin. Bros, I do not do private consultancies. Do go to Bart K. If you've got like addictions, go to PIM. And there's a couple of other people there, like for body composition, bodybuilding, and stuff like that. Jonathan is your man there. So there's a couple of people in my featured channels. I've got a day job, and I just don't have the time. I tried doing it for a while, but then it just became impossible. I ceased to have a life, and I think my personal having a bit of free life for myself is a bit more important. Richard's here as well. G'day, Richard. And there's Heinrich as well. G'day, mate. Good to have you here. I'm just going quickly through who else have I missed. Scotty's here. G'day, Scotty. And I think I've covered. Can't see anyone else that's recent. Okay, so that's the majority of yous. And I'll leave it at that. Great. Yeah, lots of local lamb. Sounds bloody good, mate. Sounds bloody good. Yeah, I actually saw some of the photos you sent me. Yeah. No, it was good stuff. I actually saw with some of the local Arab spices. That would have been really nice. I've actually I do actually get a spice mix that is a Lebanese one, which I use I season some of my lamb. Oh, really nice. Really nice. I need to find out exactly what's in it. I'll actually ask the guy from down at Spice World. I'll actually ask him and exactly what he puts in it, and I'll actually let people know. Hopefully he'll tell me. And yeah. Okay. Yeah, the traditional way. Yeah, that would be like it would have melted in your mouth. It would have been really soft and yeah. Melt. Yeah, exactly. There you go. You just replied exactly right after I said it. Yeah, it was freaking hell. Yeah, they do. There are places like Sister, yes, in Greece, that do it like that in a similar way, which is really nice in that traditional way. I do miss that sort of stuff. You don't get as much in Australia or anything. It's really, unless you do it yourself. Yeah, I definitely miss that sort of. Probably should consider. Maybe I'll talk to Sean and my brother and see whether we can do some outdoor thing that may work. Yeah. because I think there'd be a lot of value in that. Just the flavors and the the taste that you get from that charcoal and that smoke, and it's completely different. Yeah. Anyway, guys, thanks for being here. I do appreciate your time. I do appreciate your support, and I hope you got something out of it. Sort of regards to all of yous from me. I'll let Lukey see us out shortly, but all I'll say is that in about 3.5 hours from now, there will be the Eurasia live stream, which is, so if people are still awake, do come along. If it's too late for you, you can always watch it tomorrow. Do not disrupt your sleep just for a live stream. Our sleep is important to us, especially people that have got work the next day.
Definitely, Harry. But sometimes I just want to show up here, and it's nice to stay until the end. But yeah, I just hope everyone gets to share the knowledge they get here and elsewhere, and that they keep fighting the good fight and against our Kibo overlords.
That's it.
Yeah.
I mean,
my best regards to everyone.
Yeah, I mean, that video that I just did yesterday it's horrifying what's happening in Nauru. But that's the future that they're designing for all of us. That is the future where you go to a supermarket, there's no real food, and it's all processed. And it's all, Bill Gates and his mates are basically buying up everything. They don't want you to eat meat. They want you to eat Beyond Burger, processed meat, processed finished products. So that's the future that they envision for all of us. And look at the consequences on the island of Nauru. Things are really bad. Yeah, I had a public holiday last week on the Thursday, and I flexed off on the Friday. So, and on Friday, it was raining. I went out for a walk twice, but most of the day I actually played computer games.
Oh.
And Hello Kitty turned up and she said, what are you doing? She wanted me to open up a bloody vacuum. She can't bloody open it. And it's got one of those Dyson ones that are tricky to basically handle. So she was struggling with it. And so she came around. And then I said, well, I'm back on my game. See you. She said, what, you're not going to talk? No. I said, I've got other priorities. I've got other things. She goes, what, playing games? And I go, yep. See ya. Clunk.
Perfect.
Yes, another desperate woman wanting to talk to me. They realize very quickly he's not desperate. Yes, exactly, he's not. Never have been, never will be. Want to chase? Go right ahead. Anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. Take care, guys. See yous.